Chapter 1019. I won. Ning Fan waved his hand and the dark night Dao image that spread across 10,000 li instantly dispersed like smoke. His expression was very calm. His temperament had undergone a slight change compared to before. There seemed to be an additional sense of confidence in him. It was the improvement of his Dao heart after defeating the 100 Flowers Empress. In terms of cultivation base, he might not be a match for an immortal emperor. However, in terms of the Dao image, he would even dare to fight a 6th Tribulation immortal emperor. He did not need to feel inferior when facing an immortal emperor. The entire main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak was filled with devil qi, due to Ning Fan's Dao image. The cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak who cultivated the Buddhist Dharma obviously found it hard to endure such devil qi. However, none of them made a sound or left. The entire scene was strangely quiet. Only the sound of the mountain breeze could be heard. It seemed like everyone was still immersed in the shock of the 100 Flowers Empress defeat. A lesser immortal venerate actually defeated the dignified 100 Flowers Empress on the path of the Dao image. If this news were to spread, it would certainly shake the entire Middle State. Moreover, everyone could see that the reason why the 100 Flowers Empress lost was not because her Dao image was too weak, but because Ning Fan's Dao image was too strong. He was ridiculously strong. The 100 Flowers Empress barely managed to stabilize her body. She coughed weakly. Her eyes that looked at Ning Fan were filled with unconcealable shock and dispiritedness. After a long time, she finally walked out of her dispiritedness and said to Ning Fan expressionlessly, "You've won. I will definitely do what I say. The grudge between my 100 Flowers Peak and Chulai Duolon will be written off from now on. If Chulai Duolon wants to pay her respects to her mother, no one is allowed to stop her. If she walks in the territory of my 100 Flowers Peak, no one is allowed to touch her." Her tone was still a little reluctant. "Someone prepare guest rooms for little friend Ning and holy maiden Chulai. From today onwards, these two people are our 100 Flowers Peak's honored guests. No one is allowed to neglect them. The duel has ended. Those who are not in charge of patrolling the mountain should leave the main peak now." After giving the order, the 100 Flowers Empress turned around and left with the help of a few young men with flesh wings. Then the entire place was in an uproar. Before this, who would have thought that Ning Fan, who had wreaked havoc in the 100 Flowers Peak, was not only not punished, but also defeated the 100 Flowers Emperor and became his esteemed guest. Moreover, who would have thought that Duolon, who bore a deep grudge against the 100 Flowers Peak, would end her grudge against the 100 Flowers Peak today? Many 100 Flowers cultivators snorted coldly and left with a wave of their sleeves. These people all had friends and relatives who died at the hands of the previous Chulai Emperor, so their hatred for Duolon could be said to be monstrous. Unfortunately, the Flower Emperor had already given the order, so no matter how unwilling these people were, they didn't dare to make a move against Doran. There were also a few cultivators who were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they only left the main peak after exchanging a few pleasantries with Ning Fan. It could be considered as him getting acquainted with Ning Fan. With the pride of the great despicable, they wouldn't want to make friends with a mere foreign cultivator. However, no matter where they were, the strong were always respected. In the Battle of the Dao Elephant, Ning Fan defeated the 100 Flower Sovereign head-on. It was a display of his strength. Once this news spreads out, it would definitely shock the world. It was enough to make these arrogant and despicable people to respect him. However, due to the 100 Flower Emperor's order to disperse everyone, they did not dare to stay in this place for long even though they had the intention to befriend Ning Fan. Most of them only told Ning Fan their names and left. Among these people, there were even the peak lords of the few secondary peaks. Other than the immortal Lord Mingfeng of the 6th secondary peak who had yet to arrive due to his injuries, the other 6 peak lords were all present. They exchanged names with Ning Fan respectively, and their tone was extremely polite. Even the immortal King Realm peak lords of the 1st and 2nd secondary peaks treated Ning Fan as equals. They did not speak or act arrogantly towards him. With the shrewdness of these 6 peak lords, how could they not figure out the 100 Flower Sovereign's attitude? Ning Fan was the same as the foreign cultivator who saved the 100 Flower Sovereign. Thus, he was a distinguished guest of the 100 Flowers Peak. Besides, He himself possessed the strength to defeat the Tao elephant of an immortal emperor. Thus, it would not be beneath their status to befriend him. Ning Fan was extremely polite to the 6 peak lords who took the initiative to befriend him. He was not as unscrupulous as he was when he broke into the main peak. Neither was he as stern and devilish as he was when he fought the 100-flower sovereign. On the contrary, he was as gentle as a gentleman. This surprised the few peak lords. Their opinion of Ning Fan's devil cultivation base rose to another level. Not every devil cultivator could control the devil heart as he pleases. After a brief exchange of greetings, the 6 peak lords did not dare to stay on the main peak for too long. They bid farewell and left. However, before they left, the 6 of them invited Ning Fan to visit their respective secondary peaks in the future. They even said that they would treat Ning Fan with the most precious spiritual fruits of their respective peaks. It was hard for Ning Fan to reject such hospitality. Thus, he had no choice but to accept each and every one of them. After all the spectating cultivators had left, a few young men with flesh wings came to lead Ning Fan and Duo Lan back to the entrance of the cave residence. They then went to the guest rooms to rest. There were more than 100 guest rooms. Most of them were empty and covered with dust. Only 3 of them were extremely clean and tidy. Moreover, there were maids serving them. These 3 guest rooms belonged to Lord Yu, Lord Ouyang and Lord Wu respectively. At this hour, the 3 lords are still concocting medicine for Lord Ning, and they can't leave. In another 10 minutes, Lord Ning will probably be able to meet the 3 lords. One of the young men with flesh wings explained with a stiff expression. The Lord Yu that the young man mentioned was naturally Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu had a lot of enemies in the Great Humble clan. Thus, it was highly possible for him to attract trouble by revealing his name. Thus he entered the 100 Flowers Peak under a fake name. Ning Fan immediately understood this point after thinking about it. The rooms of the 2 lords will be cleaned in a moment. Please wait for a moment. While they were speaking, 8 young and beautiful maids came to clean the guest rooms as ordered. Not long after, 2 guest rooms were cleaned and 4 maids were left in each room to serve them. These 2 guest rooms were naturally for Ning Fan and Duo Lan to stay in. However, before they checked in, the few young men with flesh wings still asked, I wonder if Lord Ning and Lord Duo Lan need to stay in the same guest room? If there is a need in this aspect, I will order the maids to clean a more spacious guest room for the 2 lords to stay in, so that it will be more convenient for the 2 lords to work at night. Work at night? Work at night? Duo Lan felt her ears burning. She hurriedly explained, There's no need for that. I don't have that kind of relationship with Senior Ning. It's fine for us to stay in one guest room each. She wasn't Senior Ning's concubine. How could they stay together? Speaking of which, did these corpse devils misunderstand something? Otherwise, why would they ask such a question? Now that she thought about it, in order to protect her, Senior Ning actually dared to disobey the dignified 100 Flowers Great Emperor, and had a duel with the dignified immortal Emperor Tao Elephant. If this matter fell into the eyes of others, it would most likely cause their imagination to run wild. They would regard Ning Fan's action as a hero saving a damsel in distress. They would think that there was an ambiguous relationship between the 2 of them. However, only Duo Lan knew that Senior Ning did not have any romantic relationship with her. It was just because he wanted to protect her. That was why he insisted on protecting her. Just because he wanted to protect her. Duo Lan felt a little disappointed. Ning Fan, on the other hand, could not help but laugh. The spiritual intelligence of these young corpse devils was not low. They could actually consider this kind of sexual matter so thoroughly. Their spiritual intelligence was much higher than ordinary corpse devils. It seems like this 100 Flowers Great Emperor has a unique secret in refining corpse devils. The young man with flesh wings was just asking. When he saw Duo Lan rejecting him, he pondered for a while and changed the topic. Both of you are His Excellency's honored guests. According to the rules, you can enjoy having human cauldrons serving you in this cave. If Lord Ning needs women to serve you, you can take in any of the maids here. As for Lord Duo Lan, there are no male cauldrons serving you in this cave. All the men here belong to His Excellency alone. Without His Excellency's order, we can't serve Lord Duo Lan. Therefore, if Lord Duo Lan needs anything, you must inform us in advance. We will think of a way to get some male cultivators for Lord Duolan to enjoy. No need. I don't need male cultivators to serve me in bed. Duolan's face turned even redder. Sure enough, like master like servant. Could it be that the brains of these young men with flesh wings only know how to think about the matters between men and women? Can't every question be related to this matter? Lord Duolan doesn't seem to be interested in the matters between men and women. Could it be that you have some hidden illness in your body? His Excellency is good at collecting the nectar of hundreds of flowers to make incense. It can stimulate sexual desire and cure all kinds of hidden illnesses. Among the incense that is suitable for women, there are the soft body fragrance, the red wet flower fragrance and the 10 men fragrance in one night. If Lord Duolan needs... No, I don't want any incense. There are various kinds of jade powder in the guest room. Lord Duolan can use them on your own. No need. Every day, there will be maids who will serve in warming tea. No need. Lord Duolan's dual cultivation comprehension stele allows guests to view it. If Lord Duolan needs... No need. In the storeroom, there are secret scrolls of sexual techniques drawn by a famous monk, Huan. May I know? I don't need anything. Duolan's face was so red that blood could drip from it. The young men with flesh wings were a little nervous. This Lord Duolan doesn't need anything. Could it be that he is dissatisfied with our hospitality? If His Excellency blames them for not treating their guests well, it would be troublesome. Therefore, the more Duolan refused, the more enthusiastic they became. All right. You guys can leave now. If there's anything you need, Saintess Chulai will tell you. Ningfan saw that Duolan was really embarrassed, so he ordered the young men to leave. Duolan immediately gave him a grateful look. When she met Ningfan's calm eyes, she could not help but recall the scene where he stood in front of her resolutely. All of a sudden, Duolan felt her heart beating wildly. Her heart was filled with emotions. She wanted to express her gratitude, but when she thought of Ningfan's advice, she became tongue-tied and did not know what to say to him. She knew that she had really fallen in love with Senior Ning. However, this was wrong. Ningfan withdrew his gaze and sighed softly. Do you have something to say? No. Duolan lowered her head guiltily. Her cheeks were flushed. That's for the best. When you went up the mountain, you were trapped by the misty formation and suffered some injuries. If you don't treat them in time, it will inevitably leave hidden dangers. You should go and treat your injuries quickly. I have also gained some enlightenment from the battle just now. I want to go back to my room immediately to comprehend it. I won't talk much with you. Ningfan turned around and walked towards his guest room. Duolan looked at Ningfan's back. Her heart was filled with emotions, but it turned into a deep sigh. By the way, I haven't returned your thing to you. That long-bearded old monk took away your hair-binding dragon tendon. After I got it back, I was busy with the mountain and forgot to return it to you. Ningfan suddenly turned around and handed a storage pouch to Duolan. Then he walked into his guest room. This was the storage pouch that he took from the long-bearded old monk. Inside it was the old monk's collection of broken thoughts. However, it was not important to Ningfan now. Thus he gave it to Duolan. Duolan opened the storage pouch and took out the hair-binding dragon tendon. A warm feeling filled her heart. Thank you, she muttered to herself and walked into her own room. As soon as he entered the guest room, Ningfan dismissed the 4 beautiful maids and stayed in the room alone. He was not a lustful person. It should be said that he did not lack women in his life. Thus, he did not have any intention to plunder the maids here. However, the 4 maids who wanted to curry favor with Ningfan were greatly disappointed. Ouyang Nuan and the others were still busy. He would only meet them later. Before that, Ningfan did have the intention to sort out the insights he gained from the previous battle. During the battle with the Immortal Emperor, Ningfan had continuously comprehended the usage of various Dao images. Moreover, he had comprehended the essence of the ancient devil clan for the first time. Destruction. Ningfan could vaguely feel that after comprehending the word destruction, the ancient devil bloodline in his body felt complete. It was as if from this moment onwards, he was the true ancient devil that looked down on the immortals and Buddhas. However, Ningfan had only just comprehended the ancient devil Dao of destruction. If he wanted to deepen his understanding, he would probably need a long period of accumulation. The ancient devil Dao was the word destruction. What was the ancient god Dao? What was the ancient demon Dao? Presumably, the two of them would only be considered complete after comprehending them. They were the true ancient gods and ancient demons. Very quickly, Ningfan roughly sorted out the gains from the battle. Then he recalled the final scene of the 100-Flower Emperor's defeat. His expression suddenly turned solemn. After the 100-Flower Emperor was defeated, she turned into a withered, lifeless flower. Turning into a flower could be explained by the fact that the 100-Flower Emperor's true form was a plant that gained sentience. If she was beaten into her true form, she would naturally look like this. But why was she a flower without any signs of life? Even if the 100-Flower Emperor's true form was a flower, she shouldn't be lifeless. Could it be that the 100-Flower Emperor was actually a dead person? It was not impossible. After all, there were also powerful cultivators who attained the Tao of corpse devils. They were originally lifeless existences. However, the suspicious point was that when the 100-Flower Emperor was in her human form, Ningfan clearly did not feel any corpse devil chi. Instead, her life chi was extremely vigorous. She should be a living person without a doubt. If she was really a living person, then the dead flower's true form could not be explained. A living person's true form could be a flower, but it was impossible for her to be a dead flower. What caught Ningfan's attention the most was that at that moment, his left demon eye clearly sensed an extremely obscure and weak illusory power from the dead flower. Since he possessed the innate talent of fully break illusion, Ningfan was extremely sensitive towards illusory techniques. He was confident that he did not see wrongly. At that moment, he sensed a terrifying illusory power from the dead flower. Then he activated the illusory power and turned the dead flower into the 100-Flower Emperor's appearance bit by bit like an illusion. Ningfan's eyes became extremely solemn. He had never seen an illusory technique of such a level in his life. It was as if someone had used an extremely powerful illusory technique to turn a lifeless flower with no cultivation base into an immortal emperor. Could it be that the 100-Flower Emperor is not a real person but a person created by an illusory technique? As soon as this thought appeared, it stirred up a storm in Ningfan's heart. He could not confirm whether this speculation was true or not. However, if it was true, then this matter was indeed rather terrifying. The 100-Flower Emperor was definitely not a weakling. How strong must the person who could create the 100-Flower Emperor with an illusory technique be? What kind of profound illusory technique was that? Besides, if this is true, does anyone in the Great Humble Clan know about the secret of the 100-Flower Emperor? Or is he the only one who knows about this secret? If this matter is made known to others, would it violate some taboos in the clan? Or perhaps, I'm just overthinking things. There is no conflict between a living person and a dead flower, but it's caused by the cultivation method. Is there really such a powerful illusory technique in this world that can create an immortal emperor's illusory technique? Ningfan sighed with emotion. He felt that the waters of this 100-Flowers Peak were much deeper than he had imagined. After a while, a wave of chi of dark luck suddenly rushed in from outside the door. Ningfan opened his eyes. He knew that old Wu and the others had returned. Master, my most respected and beloved master, you're finally here. During the days when you weren't around, Little Eight has been loyal and devoted. He protected Mistress Yu and Mistress Ouyang on behalf of Master. I don't know how much suffering he had gone through and how much he had suffered. The hardships he had gone through are not worth mentioning to others. Moreover, because he didn't understand the laws of the Middle State, he was hunted by the city lords several times. Ningfan saw a black shadow flashing in front of his eyes. A wretched-looking old man with green bean-like eyes had already entered the room. He knelt on the ground, hugged his knees and wailed loudly. Who else could it be other than old Wu? Some of the words you used are wrong. Ningfan was a little speechless. Master, you don't know. You don't know. Little Eight has gone through all kinds of hardships and even faced death a few times. If it wasn't because of his loyalty and hot-bloodedness, if it wasn't because of his longing and gratitude towards Master, if it wasn't because he was worried that he would bring shame to Master's brilliance and noble character, Little Eight would have already been beaten to death by the enemy. Enough. Let me have a look at your storage pouch. Ning Fan frowned and his devil sense flashed. Old Wu immediately quivered. He stood up straight and hid the storage pouch on his waist. Inwardly, he was extremely shocked. It has only been a few days since I last saw him. Why did the devil chi of this malefic star become stronger again? It's really scary. W. What storage pouch? What are you talking about? Little 8 doesn't understand. Little 8 is really stupid and ignorant. He actually can't understand Master's priceless advice. If you don't hand over the storage pouch within 3 breaths, you'll have to bear the consequences. Ning Fan laughed in his heart, but pretended to be full of killing intent on his face. Old Wu was so frightened that he quickly handed over the storage pouch and acted as if he was willing to hand it over. Ning Fan only took a quick glance at the storage pouch, and was speechless to the point that he could not close his mouth. He did not believe that Old Wu had gone through any hardships during his journey to the middle state. Even though a lot of his cultivation base had been sealed by Xing Huan, his luck was not. One should know that Old Wu's dark luck divine ability was mostly related to the level of his luck. On the other hand, it had little to do with his cultivation base. If this bastard wants to set someone up, his methods would probably be accurate. According to this bastard's character, the reason why he caused such a commotion on his way to the middle state was probably true, and he probably gained a lot from it. That was why Ning Fan asked for the storage pouch as soon as they met. He wanted to see what Old Wu had gained from his trip to the middle state. As expected, not long after he let Old Wu roam freely, there were already countless good items in his storage pouch. There were actually no less than 10 million pieces of medicine soul stones. Where did this bastard get so many medicine soul stones from? They were enough for them to stay in the Great Bay clan for a long time. To external cultivators who did not have a strong medicine soul, the number of medicine soul stones they had would directly determine how long they could stay in this place. Pills. There were no less than 100 bottles, and each of them were pills that were above the 9th revolution. They were produced in the Great Bay clan. There were lead pills, silver pills, and even gold pills, magic treasures. There was actually an additional 12th Nirvana, acquired magic treasure in this bastard's storage pouch. There were more than 10 9th Nirvana and 10th Nirvana magic treasures in it. The extra 12th Nirvana magic treasure was an emerald green emperor's ancient crown. It seemed to be a defensive magic treasure. Its power was not weak at all. Besides, it seemed to have other abilities apart from its defensive properties. It seemed to be able to temporarily increase a cultivator's luck. If Master wants that Emperor Jade luck crown, just take it. Little Ba got this treasure from me in the first place to give it to Master. I definitely have no intention of keeping it for myself. Please accept it, Master. Old Wu's heart was filled with heartache, but his face was filled with a flattering smile. Ning Fan could not help but smile and shake his head. He had the god-exterminating shield of the ancient country for defensive magic treasures. There was no need for this mere 12th Nirvana acquired magic treasure. This magic treasure could increase one's luck. It was indeed very mysterious. However, it was obvious that this treasure was more beneficial to Old Wu. After all, his trump card was his dark luck. The effect of this treasure on Old Wu was much greater than ordinary innate magic treasures. Don't worry. You can keep this green hat for yourself. I don't want it. Ning Fan's words were exceptionally pleasant to Old Wu's ears. He did not care about the other meaning of green hat at all. As long as Master did not snatch this green hat from him, he, Little Ba, did not care about the other things in the storage pouch. His mouth naturally flattered Ning Fan and expressed his loyalty. He repeatedly said that after he obtained the green hat and his dark luck, he would definitely serve Master on the battlefield and become a sharp blade for Master. He would expand the territory for Master and conquer the world for Master. With his hot blood, he would conquer the territories for Master. Ning Fan directly ignored all these flattery. He calmly took away more than half of the medicine soul stones, and only left a few for Old Wu. Then, he took away more than half of the pills and returned the storage pouch to Old Wu. The wool could not be cut off in one go. Ning Fan still hoped that Old Wu would continue to plunder and accumulate wealth for him. Naturally, he had to leave some benefits for Old Wu. After doing all these, Ning Fan completely ignored Old Wu. His eyes slightly tilted and met Ouyang Nuan, and Zhang Yu's slightly mischievous smile. This pair of master and servant are really a pair of clowns. Is everything going well? What Ning Fan asked was naturally about the news regarding the 9 civet sacrificial vessel. Zhang Yu's group had come to the middle state in advance for this matter. It's still going well. According to our agreement with Baihua Emperor, as long as younger sister Nuan produces enough pills to help her heal her injuries, she will tell us all the information about the sacrificial vessel. Unfortunately, a certain someone brazenly attacked and injured Baihua Emperor with his identity as a lower being, aggravating her injuries. In this way, I'm afraid younger sister Nuan and I will have to produce more pills to fulfill our agreement. Zhang Yu glared at Ning Fan. Obviously, she had already heard about the duel between Ning Fan and Baihua Emperor on the way back to the guest room. Her eyes that were filled with anger but did not dare to say anything seemed to be blaming Ning Fan for injuring Baihua Emperor. After all, she and Baihua Emperor were old friends. She still owed Baihua Emperor some favors. She was really worried that Ning Fan would directly kill Baihua Emperor. Baihua Emperor was already severely injured and on the verge of death. Her injuries could not be further aggravated, of course. Zhang Yu would never admit that she was actually a little worried about Ning Fan. It's really a little reckless to duel with an immortal emperor. It's best if this little bastard wins. However, if he loses, it will be dangerous. A duel between Dao elephants was extremely dangerous. Even if Baihua Emperor spared Ning Fan's life, she would most likely punish him. It's possible for him to suffer severe injuries, or even have his cultivation base fall. Ouyang Nuan did not hide her worry for Ning Fan at all. She wanted to say something to reprimand him. However, when she met Ning Fan's burning eyes, the words that were about to come out of her mouth immediately lost their momentum. She only sighed softly. The opponent is an immortal emperor. Husband, you should be more cautious. Then, she gave Ning Fan a slightly reproachful look. I heard that you had a conflict with Baihua Emperor, because of a lowly woman? It's not what you think. Ning Fan felt a headache coming on, and was about to explain. However, Ouyang Nuan and Zhang Yu said at the same time. I understand. There's no need to explain. These two women had a deep tacit understanding. However, the former's tone was indifferent while the latter's tone was sarcastic. Ouyang Nuan already knew that Ning Fan was the descendant of ancient chaos. Thus, she was already mentally prepared for such a situation. Zhang Yu, on the other hand, had already determined that Ning Fan was a little thief. Thus, she tried to use any opportunity to mock Ning Fan. There's no need to explain, is it? Well, forget it then. There's no need to explain. Ning Fan left the pitiful old Wu at the side, and sat opposite the two ladies to chat. He asked them about their experiences along the way. With old Wu following them, their journey was naturally chaotic. However, most of the enemies who came to attack them were directly sent away by old Wu's bad luck, including immortal venerables and immortal kings. As long as immortal emperors did not show themselves, there were really not many people who could do anything to old Wu. Especially during their journey, old Wu had unexpectedly obtained the green hat, which was a spoil of war. After that, the power of his bad luck increased by a lot, making him even more powerful. Even though they had caused quite a lot of trouble in the middle state, fortunately, they were directly treated as distinguished guests by the Baihua Emperor after they arrived at the 100 Flowers Peak. As such, those forces who wanted to attack them no longer dared to do so. After that, Zhang Yu and the others stayed at the 100 Flowers Peak to provide the Baihua Emperor with healing pills. According to Zhang Yu, the Baihua Emperor did not lack pill refinement masters. She had already hired a few 9th Revolution Gold Core Realm pill refinement masters to concoct healing pills for the Baihua Emperor. To the four heavens, there were very few 9th Revolution Gold Core Realm pill refinement masters. To the Debay clan, there were also not many Gold Core Realm pill refinement masters, but they were not rare either. The Baihua Emperor's injuries were very strange. The healing pill was also an extremely unorthodox 9th Revolution golden pill. With many professional pill refinement masters around, there was naturally no need for Ouyang Nuan to concoct the pills herself. Moreover, there were already quite a number of semi-finished pills that had already been concocted. However, the requirements to concoct this pill were quite harsh. It could only be successfully concocted with the help of a few rare medicine souls. The five-colored medicine soul was one of them. The Baihua Emperor was injured by the power of samsara. That's why her injuries are taking so long to recover. Zhang Yu sighed softly and revealed the secret. The power of samsara? If it's the real power of samsara, I'm afraid it would have directly taken the Baihua Emperor's life. Even if it causes injuries to her, it is definitely not something that a mere 9th revolution golden pill can cure. I think the power of samsara that injured the Baihua Emperor is either incomplete or flawed. Ning Fan had some understanding about the power of samsara. That's right. The one who injured the Baihua Emperor is just an imitation of the power of samsara by a supreme second-step cultivator. It's not the real one. Otherwise, the Baihua Emperor wouldn't just be severely injured. Zhang Yu sighed with emotion. A moment later, she held Ouyang Nuan's hand gratefully. If it wasn't for younger sister Nuan, who has a 5-colored medicine soul, which is a rare medicine soul that can be used to concoct the divine essence pill, it wouldn't be that easy to cure the Baihua Emperor. I have to thank younger sister Nuan for helping me in this matter. Elder sister Zhang Yu, there's no need to be so courteous. This matter is basically to help my husband. Of course, I have to do my part. The De Bei clan has too many ancient pill recipes. All of them can only be concocted by those who possess rare medicine souls. This is also the reason why despicable people respect rare medicine soul possessors. Speaking of rare medicine souls, does Big Sister still remember those possessors of medicine souls that we met a few days ago? The more Zhang Yu and Ouyang Nuan talked, the more they got along with each other. Ning Fan was left at the side, and the two ladies went to chat among themselves. Ning Fan found it a little funny. He felt that he could not interrupt their conversation. Thus, he simply sat at the side and listened to their conversation. Master, the loyal and devoted Xiaoba is willing to chat with you? Old Wu smelled the opportunity to show his loyalty. His tiger body trembled as he moved closer. No need. These two words were faint. Yet they were so cold and lofty that they caused Old Wu to suffer a great blow. Master would rather remain silent than chat with Xiaoba. Master would rather remain silent than chat with Xiaoba. Master would rather remain silent. Master, Lord. He continued to ignore the pitiful Old Wu. As he listened, Ning Fan's eyes gradually turned solemn. It was because Zhang Yu finally talked about the past where she ran amok in the past. According to Zhang Yu, she was saved by the 100-Flower Emperor when she was trapped in a tight encirclement. Thus she owed him a favor. Because of that, she coincidentally heard the news of the 100-Flower Emperor being severely injured when Ning Fan went out. Then, she used a secret method to contact the 100-Flower Emperor. After learning that the 100-Flower Emperor might know the whereabouts of the sacrificial artifact, she brought Ouyang Nuan along and directly rushed to the Middle State to save the 100-Flower Emperor. She was in a hurry to save the 100-Flower Emperor, but she really did not have the time to wait for Ning Fan's return. From this point of view, even though Zhang Yu had a lot of shortcomings, she was really a person who knew how to repay kindness. In the past, I ran amok in the Middle State with my peak Immortal Emperor realm cultivation base. However, I was severely injured by an ox spirit who suddenly appeared. At the critical moment, it was Baihua who saved me with her profound Tao of formations. If it wasn't for her, even if I didn't die that year, I would have to pay a huge price. I still remember when I first met Baihua. She was gentle and compassionate like the Bodhisattva, who saved people from suffering as recorded in the Buddhist scriptures. She had never been so interested in men. However, I didn't expect her to become like this after all these years. She is decisive and domineering. Moreover, she actually has many male servants. It has been many years since we last met. Things have really remained the same, but the people have changed. Zhang Yu was very emotional. That kind of things had remained the same, but the people had changed. It was a period of time from the ancient times to the present day. Compared to the current Baihua Emperor, she certainly preferred the Baihua of the past. She liked the little lady who would even save an ant. She was very silly. She was so silly that she didn't seem like a cultivator. However, she was really cute. Even though the current Baihua Emperor had changed a lot, becoming ruthless and cunning, she had always been a person who valued kindness. Naturally, she would not forget the kindness of the other party for saving her life just because of this little change. A true friend would always be her no matter what the other party had become. She was just her. Wait a minute. Are you saying that the Bai Hua of the past and the current Bai Hua have very different personalities? Ning Fan suddenly spoke, interrupting the conversation between the two ladies. Zhang Yu habitually mocked him. Why are you so concerned about the topic related to Bai Hua? Could it be that you, little thief, have taken a fancy to Bai Hua? If that's really the case, I have to give you a piece of advice. You better stay away from women like Bai Hua. Her tone might sound sarcastic, but it was actually a piece of advice. She was afraid that Ning Fan would fail in his dual cultivation with Bai Hua Emperor, and be plucked clean by her instead. The current Bai Hua Emperor is not a kind person. It's best not to touch her. I'll remember your advice. However, you should at least answer my question. Ning Fan felt a little helpless. When can Zhang Yu change her habit of speaking with a mouthful of gunpowder? All right. You're the master. How can I dare not to answer your question? Bai Hua is indeed like a completely different person now. However, this is the way of cultivation. People will always change as time passes. No one will stay in the same place forever, and no one will never change. Is that really the case? Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. He could vaguely imagine the scene where Bai Hua Emperor was as pure and holy as a bodhisattva in the past, and could not bear to harm the lives of ants. Is there a possibility? It's not that Bai Hua Emperor's personality changed drastically. It's that the Bai Hua of the past and the current Bai Hua were not the same person at all. No matter what the truth is, it has nothing to do with me. I mustn't get too involved. Having made up his mind, Ning Fan no longer asked for any information about Bai Hua Emperor. After chatting with the two ladies for a while, they returned to their respective rooms to rest. Ouyang Wan's mental strength was greatly depleted as she helped Bai Hua Emperor nourish her pills. Thus, Ning Fan did not sleep with her in the same room, but gave her enough time to rest. On the morning of the second day, Ouyang Wan went to the 100 Blossoms Emperor's abode's alchemy room with Zhang Yu and Old Wu as usual to nurture the 100 Blossoms Emperor's semi-finished divine essence pill with the 5-colored medicine soul. Ning Fan followed her to take a look. He realized that he could not be of much help with his current medicine soul level. Thus, he did not reveal his medicine soul and intervene in this matter. Instead, he stayed to protect Ouyang Wan for a day. On the third day, Ning Fan still went to protect Ouyang Wan. On the fourth day, many peak lords of the 7 auxiliary and 49 peaks of Bai Hua Peak sent their visiting cards to Ning Fan. Since Ning Fan had promised to visit them that day, it was naturally inappropriate for him to reject them. Thus, he decided to keep his promise and visit them to inquire about the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing Battle. The second round of the Mausoleum Seizing Battle was about to begin. According to Zhang Yu, in the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing Battle, there was an item that was extremely important for the Bai Hua Emperor to recover from her injuries. Only by obtaining a certain rank in the second round could she obtain this item. Without this item, the Bai Hua Emperor's cultivation base would definitely fall after she recovers from her injuries, even if she had a large amount of divine essence pills. The name of this item was the South Sea Spring Water. It was said that if a severely injured person consumes this item, they would not have to worry about their cultivation base falling after their injuries are healed. With the Bai Hua Emperor's identity, if it's an ordinary item, she would naturally find a way to obtain it. There was no need for Ning Fan to obtain it after obtaining a good rank in the second round. The problem was that the person who provided the South Sea Spring Water as the reward was not a force of the Middle State, but the Holy Mountain faction. Moreover, they seemed to have some grudges with the Bai Hua Emperor. In that case, even if the Bai Hua Emperor had a special identity, it would be extremely difficult for her to obtain this item. Unless someone could obtain this item in the second round, and give it to the Bai Hua Emperor legitimately. If this South Sea Spring Water really has such a miraculous effect, it would certainly be of great help to the Bai Hua Emperor and the ancient Chaos Emperor. Ning Fan's thoughts gradually drifted away. If he succeeds in saving the ancient Chaos Emperor, it was still unknown whether the latter could recover his previous cultivation base. However, if I have the South Sea Spring Water, Judging from this, I really need to make a good plan for the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle. Before that, it's better to gather more information to increase our chances of success. Chapter 1020. The 7 auxiliary peaks and the 49 peaks sent Ning Fan more than 30 invitations, inviting him to taste the spiritual fruits and discuss the Tao. Those who dared to send invitations were at least at the thought fragmentation realm. After all, void-shedding cultivators were not confident that they could invite Ning Fan, who was an ancient immortal venerable. In fact, even those thought fragmentation realm cultivators were not absolutely confident that they could invite Ning Fan to their residence. Therefore, other than the lords of the 6 auxiliary peaks who sincerely invited Ning Fan, the rest of the invitations were more of a symbolic gesture of goodwill. However, Ning Fan actually kept his promise and visited each and every one of the Nirvana fragmentation realm cultivators, making them feel extremely flattered. The layout of 100 Flowers Peak consisted of 1 main peak, 7 auxiliary peaks and 49 other peaks. The lord of the 47th peak was at the early thought fragmentation realm. One day he was brewing tea and reading scriptures in his cave, when he suddenly heard a young monk report that a cultivator with the surname Ning had come to visit. He was so shocked that he did not even hold the teacup properly and dropped it on the ground. After recovering from his shock, he hurriedly asked someone to invite Ning Fan into his residence. Then he excitedly took out all kinds of treasures and warmly entertained Ning Fan. I didn't expect that Senior Ning would be willing to visit my residence. This junior is really honored. The spiritual fruits and tea in my residence are crude. I hope Senior won't dislike them. Peak Lord is too polite. If I'm not mistaken, these spiritual fruits and tea are quite beneficial to the improvement of magic power. If thought fragmentation realm cultivators drink them frequently, they will gain a lot of benefits over time. If Senior likes them, you can use more of them. I'm ashamed to say that the spiritual fruits and tea in my hands aren't of a high grade. They might be useful for thought fragmentation realm cultivators, but for an ancient immortal venerable like you, I'm afraid they won't be of much use. It's a pity that my cultivation base is limited. I can't take out higher grade spiritual fruits and tea. I hope Senior can understand. Peak Lord, you don't have to be so polite. Spiritual fruits and tea are just external things. If you don't mind, why don't we exchange our cultivation experiences? Senior is actually willing to guide this junior. As a result, the lords of the 47 peaks became even more excited. They took out more treasures to entertain Ning Fan, and raised some questions about their cultivation during the conversation. Even though Ning Fan had yet to experience these cultivation problems, he had the Tao comprehension of the second level of the celestial being realm after all. Thus, it was not difficult for him to give some pointers. Usually, he would be able to point out the key points of the problem with just a few words, allowing the other party to be enlightened. Therefore, even though it was just giving pointers, it actually did not take him much time. Besides, listening to the troubles of a thought fragmentation realm expert might not necessarily be bad for his future cultivation. One day, he would also attain the thought fragmentation realm. These spiritual fruits and spiritual teas weren't as crude as what the Peak Master had described. They were only crude for ancient immortal venerables. For nirvanic cultivators, they were precious. For void-shedding cultivators, they were extremely helpful. Just by using a small amount of spiritual fruits and spiritual tea, Ning Fan's ancient god realm and ancient demon realm magic power actually improved a lot. Moreover, these spiritual fruits and spiritual tea also had the miraculous effect of consolidating one's cultivation base. It gradually solidified Ning Fan's ancient god realm and ancient demon realm, which had just broken through. Besides, during their short conversation, Ning Fan also tried to get some information about the second round of the tomb-seizing battle by beating around the bush. The Peak Master knew that Ning Fan wanted to get some information. However, he was grateful for his guidance. Thus, he simply engraved all the information he knew into a jade slip using his spirit sense, and passed it to Ning Fan. Ning Fan only stayed for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea before he left. This made the Peak Master feel very regretful. However, the Peak Master also understood that with Ning Fan's identity as an immortal venerable, He was already giving him a lot of face by being willing to stay for a cup of tea on this Peak Master's peak. Of course, he would not blame him. Besides, Ning Fan also said that if he has time in the future, he would visit again. He hoped that the Peak Master would not dislike him and so on. This made the Peak Master have great expectations for Ning Fan's future visit. He was full of welcoming words. Of course, he would not dislike him. It was just a short visit, but everyone was happy. Such a happy scene also happened in the 43rd Peak Master's Peak, 41st Peak Master's Peak and 39th Peak Master's Peak. In just half a day's time, Ning Fan had already visited more than 20 Thought Fragmentation Realm cultivators' cave dwellings and gained their goodwill. He also ate a lot of spiritual fruits and spiritual teas. He had also gathered a lot of information. His cultivation base of the ancient deities and ancient demons had also completely stabilized. He had even taken a huge step forward towards the late Void Severing Realm. Regarding the cultivation of Fragmentation Realm cultivators, Ning Fan also gained a lot of experience. If he has time in the future, he really would not reject this kind of visit that was beneficial to both parties. After that, it was time to visit the 10,000 ancient peak masters of the various auxiliary peaks. According to etiquette, he should actually pay a visit to the peak masters of the auxiliary peaks who had a more honorable status first before visiting the peak masters of the other peaks. Ning Fan did the opposite. It was not intentional. It was just that those peak masters seemed to be more serious when they invited Ning Fan to visit them. They actually staggered the time of their visit, as if each of them wanted to entertain Ning Fan for the whole day. They did not want Ning Fan to leave after just a cup of tea. The Peak Master of the 7th Auxiliary Peak invited Ning Fan to visit them one day later. The Peak Master of the 6th Auxiliary Peak, who was also the Light Peak Venerable Immortal, also sent out an invitation card, inviting Ning Fan to visit them 2 days later. He said that he wanted to thank Ning Fan for showing mercy to him. As for the Peak Master of the 5th Auxiliary Peak, he invited Ning Fan to meet them 3 days later. As for the other Peak Masters, they staggered the time of their visit and arranged it one by one, as if they had discussed it beforehand. Originally, Ning Fan only wanted to visit the Peak Masters of the auxiliary peaks out of courtesy. However, with the benefits of the broken thoughts from the other peaks, Ning Fan was more or less looking forward to visiting the ancient monsters. These ancient monsters were very serious in their actions. Presumably, the spirit fruits and spirit tea that they would serve him would not be ordinary either. The Great Bay clan seemed to be very rich in spirit fruits and spirit tea. The Broken Thought spirit tea already had so many benefits. If it was the eternal spirit tea, the benefits would be even greater. It seems like I'm just trying to get free food and drink. However, the visit is a matter of mutual consent. I'm not the only one who can benefit from it. Because the 7th Auxiliary Peak's invitation was tomorrow, Ning Fan did not visit them. Instead, he returned to the main peak. As soon as he arrived at the mountain gate of the 100 Flowers Emperor's Cave, a young man with fleshy wings who was waiting for him respectfully brought him in. The journey was full of twists and turns, and the formation was blurred as they returned to the guest room. It was considered a very courteous reception. As a matter of fact, Ning Fan had already stayed in the 100 Flowers Emperor's Cave for 4 days. He had already comprehended the formation of the cave. If he wanted to, he could enter and leave the cave on his own, even if no one led the way. However, if the 100 Flowers Emperor knew about this, he would most likely feel a little apprehensive. No one would be willing to have the formation of their cave completely seen through by others. Thus, Ning Fan did not reveal that he had seen through the formation to avoid unnecessary trouble. The young man with fleshy wings still led the way. After returning to the guest room, Ning Fan began to organize the various comprehensions that he had gained today. He also began to refine the remaining medicinal power of the spirit fruits and spirit tea in his body. A day passed by very quickly. On the 5th day, Ning Fan visited the 7th Auxiliary Peak as promised. This was an immortal venerable who had gone through the first tribulation of the eternal era. He took out a lot of precious spirit fruits to entertain Ning Fan, which allowed Ning Fan's ancient deity and ancient demon cultivation base to improve greatly. The spirit fruits that this person took out increased his magic power by several times compared to yesterday. Thus, it could be seen that the benefits of visiting an immortal venerable were naturally greater than those of a mere broken thoughts cultivator. The visit lasted for an entire day before Ning Fan left. The two of them exchanged a lot of cultivation experiences. With Ning Fan's Tao comprehension, he naturally answered their questions fluently. On the 6th day, Ning Fan visited the 6th auxiliary peak and met with Venerable Ming Feng. Venerable Ming Feng's injuries were not light, but he knew that Ning Fan had already shown him mercy. Thus, he naturally did not blame Ning Fan. Especially later, when Ming Feng learned about Ning Fan's valiant battle record of defeating the 100 Flowers Emperor, he was even more convinced that Ning Fan had held back a lot of his strength when he fought with his Tao elephant. Thus, he was truly grateful to Ning Fan. Due to his severe injuries, Venerable Ming Feng did not ask Ning Fan to stay. The two of them only chatted for a short while. Then, Venerable Ming Feng used tea in place of wine to punish himself by drinking 3 cups of wine. He had no choice but to leave the banquet and return to his room to treat his injuries. Ning Fan naturally would not blame Venerable Ming Feng for neglecting his guest. Even though Venerable Ming Feng did not talk to him for a long time, he gave him a lot of rare spirit fruits. The amount was almost 10 times more than what Ning Fan had eaten in the 7th auxiliary peak. These spirit fruits were considered quite precious to Venerable Ming Feng. His action showed that Venerable Ming Feng's gratitude to Ning Fan was not just verbal. It was sincere. Ning Fan could not finish such a large amount of spirit fruits in a day. Thus, he decided to keep them and eat them slowly. On the 7th day, the 8th day and the 9th day, Ning Fan visited the peak lords of the 5th, 4th and 3rd auxiliary peaks one after another. On the 10th day, Ning Fan visited the peak lord of the 2nd auxiliary peak. When he was about to leave that night, this peak lord actually held Ning Fan's hand and spoke with a tone of regret that they did not meet earlier. I have been arrogant all my life. There are very few immortal kings at the same level as me who are sincerely convinced by me. There are even fewer venerables who can convince me. Fellow Taoist, Tao comprehension is so profound that I have never seen anyone like you before. I believe that fellow Taoist will definitely enter the immortal king realm in less than 1 million years. Fellow Taoist thinks too highly of me. Advancing to the immortal king realm in 1 million years is just too difficult. Ning Fan said politely, but he was actually quite confident in his heart. This peak lord of the immortal king realm did not have any ill intentions when he said those words. Instead, he thought highly of Ning Fan. After all, for ordinary people, not to mention 1 million years, they might not be able to reach the immortal king realm, even if they cultivate for 10 million years. Even many void-severing old monsters and thought-severing old monsters had cultivated for a few million years. It was imaginable how fast their cultivation speed would be after reaching the true immortal realm. However, Ning Fan was not an ordinary person. Counting the time in the outside world, he had cultivated for less than 1,000 years. However, his cultivation base was already so unfathomable. Counting his bone age, he was only slightly more than 40,000 years old. Of course, it was because he had used many towers of time and towers of time. Ning Fan did not dare to be certain about the 3rd step. After all, the inheritance of the 3rd step had already been cut off in the Age of Chaos. However, as for the 2nd step, Ning Fan was confident that he could reach the peak of the 2nd step in this lifetime. After that, he would pursue the 3rd step and the 4th step. On the 11th day, Ning Fan was finally going to visit the peak lord of the 1st auxiliary peak, Reverend White Deer. He was a peak immortal king who was about to become a quasi-emperor. Even though he was not as strong as Battle King Luo Hu, he was not much weaker. On this day, when Ning Fan was about to visit White Deer's spiritual master, Duolan suddenly came to him. As a matter of fact, Duolan's room was not far from Ning Fan's room. However, he knew that Ning Fan was busy making friends with the cultivators of 100 Flowers Palace. Thus, he did not disturb Ning Fan too much. He only came over occasionally to greet Ning Fan. Today, however, he had a request. I heard that Senior is going to the 1st auxiliary peak to visit White Deer's spiritual master. I wonder if you can bring this Junior along. Oh, you want to meet White Deer's spiritual master? Do you have some relationship with him? Ning Fan was surprised. No. This Junior is not going to the 1st auxiliary peak to meet White Deer's spiritual master. I want to pay my respects to my mother. Pay respects to your mother? Ning Fan was surprised. After the 100 Flowers Emperor lost the battle, he mentioned Duolan and also mentioned that he was allowed to pay respects to his mother. However, Ning Fan did not think too much about it. Now, it seemed like there was more to this matter. Could it be that Duolan's mother is buried in the first auxiliary peak? If so, she probably has a deep relationship with the 100 Flowers Peak. When he thought of the previous fierce Chu Emperor's action of massacring the 100 Flowers Peak, Ning Fan understood that everything in this world had its cause and effect. The so-called massacring of the 100 Flowers Peak probably had its own cause and effect. Yes. My mother is buried in the first auxiliary peak. I heard from my father that my mother used to be the previous peak lord of the first auxiliary peak. Duolan's eyes were very calm. She did not have the heart-wrenching pain of her mother's death. After all, she was still so young when her mother died. So young that her memories of her childhood were already blurred. But occasionally he would dream of his mother's blurry face, dream of that guilty and reluctant gaze. Every time she dreamt of that scene, she would have an indescribable feeling of annoyance. It was as if there were fine needles pricking her heart. She would feel a faint pain, but she could not move it away. What kind of person was her mother? Even though I won't be able to see her again in this life, I still want to pay respects to her. Why don't you go there yourself? The 100 Flowers Emperor seems to have given the order to allow you to walk freely in this place and pay respects to your mother. Ning Fan asked. I've been there once a few days ago and once again yesterday. It's just that Senior doesn't know about it. Even though the people of the first auxiliary peak didn't attack me or make things difficult for me, I can't break through the fog of the first auxiliary peak with my current cultivation base. I can't go up the mountain no matter how hard I try, Duolan said shamefully. No one stopped her from going up the mountain. It was because her cultivation base wasn't high enough that she couldn't go up the mountain. The 7 great auxiliary peaks had natural fog. If an ordinary cultivator's cultivation base wasn't high enough, and they didn't have a guide from the other peaks, it would be very difficult for them to pass through the fog. Ning Fan already knew about this when he visited the other peaks. Obviously, the cultivators of the first auxiliary peak didn't welcome Duolan's arrival. They didn't stop Duolan, but they didn't send anyone to lead her up the mountain either. It was already very rare for them to not attack Duolan under the 100 Flowers Emperor's strict order. If I bring you along, I don't know if there will be more trouble. Ning Fan slightly frowned. Duolan lowered her head sadly after hearing his words. Ning Fan then changed the topic. Fine. You can come with me. I'll bring you up the mountain. There won't be any trouble. Thank you, Senior. Duolan was overjoyed. Ning Fan nodded and summoned the young man with the fleshy wings. The young man then led the way out of the cave. Duolan followed them all the way to the first auxiliary peak. He didn't like to get into trouble, but he also admired loyal and filial cultivators. If it was for other things, Ning Fan might not necessarily help Duolan. However, if it was for the sake of sacrificing his mother, he wouldn't mind helping her. Presumably, Daoist Bai Lu, who wanted to befriend him, would not fall out with him over such a trivial matter. At the foot of the first auxiliary peak, there were already people waiting there to welcome Ning Fan. When they saw Duolan walking together with Duolan, they were stunned and hesitant. However, they returned to normal after a while and respectfully led Ning Fan and Duolan up the mountain. It didn't cause any waves. Interestingly, Ning Fan secretly used his mind-reading technique on some of the female cultivators who were leading the way to the mountain to gather information. He actually saw such thoughts in some of the female cultivators' minds. Peak Lord's guess is right. Lord Ning really brought Saintess Chu Lai along with him. Fortunately, Peak Lord has already given us the order. Otherwise, we wouldn't be too flustered. Peak Lord has already given us the order. If Lord Ning is traveling together with Saintess Chu Lai, we can't neglect her. Even though I'm unwilling, I can't neglect Saintess Chu Lai either. The mind-reading technique is really useful. They went all the way up the mountain and arrived at the entrance of Daoist Bai Lu's cave. As soon as they arrived, Daoist Bai Lu walked out of the cave at the right time, as if he already knew everything. His eyes moved between Ning Fan and Duolan meaningfully. After a while, he ordered the others to bring Duolan to the back of the mountain to sacrifice his mother. As for himself, he personally led Ning Fan into the cave. As usual, they enjoyed the spiritual fruits and spiritual tea while discussing the Tao. This Taoist Bai Lu's comprehension of the Tao was quite profound. Ning Fan gained a lot from discussing the Tao with him. However, as time went by, the topic of Taoist Bai Lu's conversation gradually changed. It seemed like he was beating around the bush for a while. He casually mentioned the saintesses of the other sacred mountains. Then, he casually mentioned that there was a quasi-emperor realm cultivator who was close to breaking through to the sovereign realm. It seemed like she had obtained some kind of opportunity. With Ning Fan's wisdom, how could he not know that Taoist Bai Lu invited him to visit? Discussing the Tao was just one of the reasons. Befriending him was also another reason. Most probably he had something else to ask for. However, since Taoist Bai Lu did not take the initiative to mention it, Ning Fan did not expose him. He just smiled and sipped his spiritual tea calmly. Gradually, Taoist Bai Lu also stopped talking. Instead, he looked at Ning Fan meaningfully. He was rather surprised. After a long time, he praised. When we first met that day, I already felt that fellow Taoist is an anomaly in the devil Tao. Your control over your devil heart has almost reached the point of perfection. Today, when I see you again, I realize that I still underestimated you. Your temperament is much calmer than I expected. If fellow Taoist has something to say, why don't you speak frankly? Ning Fan put down the teacup and said with a smile. With fellow Taoist's wisdom, I'm sure you already know that I invited you here for a request. Indeed, I can see a thing or two. However, I wonder what is it? I'm just an external cultivator. There doesn't seem to be anything that fellow Taoist wants. Fellow Taoist Ning, please don't misunderstand. I definitely don't have any intention of scheming against you. I just have some benefits that I want to share with you. Oh, what benefits? Why don't you tell me? Ning Fan's expression did not change. A great benefit. A benefit that can increase your chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm. Taoist Bai Lu observed Ning Fan's expression. He could not help but feel a little surprised when he saw that Ning Fan did not have any reaction towards the matter of increasing his chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm. One should know that if other ancient old monsters hear about the benefits of increasing their chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm, most of them would have a slight change of expression and be tempted. Breaking through to the sovereign realm could be said to be the ultimate goal of every ancient cultivator. However, the difficulty of breaking through to the immortal emperor realm was extremely high. There were also very few things that could increase one's chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm. Even for him who had already taken half a step into the sovereign realm, it was hard to say how many years he would be stuck in the quasi-emperor realm if he did not have enough luck. The difficulty of breaking through to the sovereign realm could be seen from this. In Taoist Bai Lu's opinion, it was certainly impossible for Ning Fan to not want to break through to the sovereign realm. However, his indifference was really out of his expectation. It seemed like this person's shrewdness was still beyond his expectations. It wasn't that Ning Fan was not tempted by the chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm. It was just that he did not have much of a concept about breaking through to the sovereign realm. He also did not have a deep understanding of how difficult it was. To be honest, the matter of breaking through to the sovereign realm was indeed still too far away for him. His cultivation base of the ancient god realm and ancient demon realm was only at the void abandonment realm. His cultivation base of the ancient devil realm was only at the 9 nirvana heavenly devil realm. His cultivation base of the tribulation blood realm was indeed powerful, but he did not have a proper cultivation method. The reason why he could reach his current cultivation base was because of luck. If he wanted to advance to a higher realm, it would be extremely difficult. It seemed to be too early to talk about the chances of breaking through to the sovereign realm now. If I'm not mistaken, fellow Taoists should be quite proficient in the Tao of dual cultivation, right? Taoist Bai Lu remained silent for a while, and said, I can't say that I'm proficient in it, but I know a thing or two about it. If I'm not mistaken, you seem to be proficient in the Tao of dual cultivation as well. Could it be that you're cultivating the joyful Zen of Buddhism? Fellow Taoist has sharp eyes. Indeed, I'm cultivating the joyful Zen. Taoist Bai Lu's eyes narrowed. He was a little surprised by Ningfan's insight. Buddhist cultivators were particular about the 4 elements being empty and the 6 senses being pure. They rarely touched women as it would damage the foundation of Buddhism. Therefore, most of the Buddhist cultivators were people who focused on cultivating their nature. Some Buddhist cultivators who had profound attainments in the Tao of Buddhism even kept their virginity for the rest of their lives. They even cultivated the elephant horse Yin song of Buddhism and directly absorbed their male penis into their bodies and sealed it. However, there was also a type of Buddhist cultivators who cultivated the joyful Zen. They cultivated the Tao of dual cultivation to improve their cultivation base. For example, the 100 Flowers Great Emperor was a cultivator of the joyful Zen. Taoist Bai Lu was also a cultivator of this Tao. In the joyful Zen, as long as both parties are willing to do it, it was not an outrageous thing. The 100 Flowers Great Emperor Ningfan did not comment on it. However, the baleful qi on Taoist Bai Lu's body was close to 0. Obviously, he did not commit many sins in his life. He was not the kind of person who would take advantage of women and kill people. However, this person first mentioned the saintess, then the sovereign realm and then dual cultivation. With Ningfan's shrewdness, he had already vaguely guessed what all the methods that Taoist Bai Lu used to increase the chances of becoming in sovereign realm were. Fellow Taoist, do you have any thoughts about the saintess Chu Lai? Taoist Bai Lu finally got to the point after beating around the bush. Ningfan knew that Taoist Bai Lu was not asking if they had an affair. Instead, he was asking if Ningfan wanted to pluck Duo Lan and obtain the mother-child Yin Qi in her body. That was something that only the saintess who had been soaking in the mother-child pool since she was young could have. There were very few things in the world that could increase the chances of becoming in sovereign realm. However, this item was definitely one of them. Ningfan could not help but recall the time when he first captured Duo Lan. Duo Lan was so resolute when she threatened him with her own life. I can let you plant the 3-Yin soul-locking technique in me, but I, Duo Lan, will never comply with that. If you force me, I would rather die here. If I die, you will certainly get into big trouble after the closed tomb period. I know that you have a great purpose for entering great humble country. That's why you don't want to get into trouble. If you don't do that to me, you will definitely regret it. I, Duo Lan, promise you with my life. That day, what that little girl wanted to protect with her life was not the purity of her body, but the mother-child Yin Qi in her body. So what if I have an idea? So what if I don't? Ningfan's attitude was non-committal. He wanted to hear what Taoist Bai Lu was going to say next. It's fine if you don't have an idea. If you do, with your identity as an external cultivator, the difficulty of seducing the saintess of the sacred mountain is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The emperors of the sacred mountain will definitely not allow this to happen, unless fellow Taoists can get the support of some powerful beings of the sacred mountain. Ningfan's eyes slightly narrowed. After a long time he asked, "What should I do? Please give me some pointers." Fellow Taoist really has such an idea. It couldn't be better. I know that the reason why fellow Taoist is so protective of that saintess Chu Lai is definitely not as simple as what the rumors say. Indeed, fellow Taoist has a great plan. You want the mother-child Yin Qi of the saintess. Even a quasi-emperor like me wouldn't dare to covet that item. However, with fellow Taoist strength, I'm afraid you really have a chance to get it. White Deer's spiritual master looked at Ningfan as if he was a close friend, and continued. Among the branches of the sacred mountain, I have a good relationship with an immortal king of the spirit sect. That's why I know some information. The saint of the spirit sect has been collecting women with rare medicine souls as his concubines all year round. He uses the joyful Zen technique to pluck them for dual cultivation. If someone provides him with a rare medicine soul, he will definitely reward them handsomely. If the medicine soul of the woman is rare enough to have a 5-colored medicine soul, there is a possibility of obtaining the support of the spirit sect, even if it's too much to ask for the saintess of Chu Lai. However, fellow Taoist is just an external cultivator after all. It's impossible for you to get all of the Yin Qi in Chu Lai and Duo Lan's body. At most, you can only take 20 to 30%. The remaining 70 to 80% will still belong to the old monsters of the sacred mountain. As for the 20 to 30% that fellow Taoist obtained, you should at least share it with me. After all, I'm the one who shared this information with fellow Taoist. Ning Fan's eyes immediately turned cold. Clearly, White Deer spiritual master wanted Ning Fan to offer Ouyang Nuan to the saint of the spirit sect. Selling his wife for glory. After selling his wife, he could only pluck 20 to 30% of Duo Land's mother-child Yin Qi. Duo Land's fate was to be plucked by the other old monsters of the sacred mountain. This White Deer spiritual master also wanted to take advantage of Duo Land's body and obtain a little Yin Qi to increase his chances of breaking through to the immortal emperor realm. How shameless! Although this person didn't kill many people and his baleful qi wasn't dense, he had done many shameless things before. Fellow Taoist, why are you so angry? Did I say something wrong? White Deer spiritual master was surprised. His expression also turned cold. I will never sell my wife. As for the mother-child Yin Qi and Saintess Chu Lai's body, I don't covet it either. Fellow Taoist, you found the wrong person by looking for me. Ning Fan suddenly stood up and was about to leave. White Deer spiritual master was shocked. He gritted his teeth. This was a great opportunity for him to obtain the saintess's Yin Qi. How could he miss it? Fellow Taoist, are you reluctant to part with Ouyang Nuan's beauty? This is a big mistake. As long as one could become an emperor, there was no need to worry about not having a wife. As long as one could become an emperor, there was no need to worry about not having a beautiful woman to enjoy. Fellow Taoist, offering your wife and the bloodline of the spirit sect is of great benefit to you becoming an emperor. Moreover, as long as you give me some face, the spirit sect's holy son will most likely be willing to return Ouyang Nuan after he plucks her. Just as Taoist White Deer was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. He saw Ning Fan turn around all of a sudden and exuded an extremely strong killing intent. Even though he was a quasi-emperor, his heart was beating wildly. From Ning Fan's body, he sensed a sense of danger that was enough to kill him. You and I have different paths, so we can't work together. However, if you continue to blaspheme my wife, Ning Fan wouldn't dare to kill a quasi-emperor on this secondary peak. You better watch your mouth. Every single word was filled with devilish might, and it wasn't an empty show of strength. Instead, it truly made Taoist White Deer feel as if his life was hanging by a thread. It was the golden palm of the flame ancestor that gave Taoist White Deer a sense of crisis. At this moment, Ning Fan was hiding the golden palm token in his sleeve. Although Taoist White Deer could not see it, he was truly shocked by the deadly sense of danger. Taoist White Deer's heart was filled with shock. At first, he thought that Ning Fan was just an ordinary immortal venerable with a powerful Tao manifestation and a sealed cultivation base. Now, it seemed like this person clearly had a terrifying trump card that could kill a quasi-emperor in a single strike. This person was not someone to be trifled with. However, he had good intentions after all. Even if this person doesn't agree with it, he shouldn't be so angry. This person is really rude. As expected, all the devil cultivators in the world were arrogant and rude. They weren't worth befriending. For example, the previous Chu Lai who was so angry that he bathed the world in blood. For a woman, he incurred the wrath of the entire world and mistakenly entered the devil path. In the end, he died and his clan was annihilated. Everyone turned against him, and he became the laughingstock of the world. This kind of person couldn't be considered a great man. Among the people who invited Ning Fan, Taoist White Deer was the only one who disdained Ning Fan. He looked down on Ning Fan. If he couldn't even give up on a woman, how could he achieve great things? Even though he looked down on Ning Fan, he was truly frightened by Ning Fan's undisguised killing intent. His aura immediately weakened. A dignified quasi-emperor actually did not dare to say anything blasphemous about Ouyang Nuan in front of Ning Fan. This young man was a madman who dared to fight against an immortal emperor. If he really infuriated this crazy devil, he was afraid that his life would really be in danger. A real man doesn't need to lower himself to the same level as a boorish man. Since this young man wants to leave, just let him go. After all, he's just a brat. He's not enough to scheme against. Seeing Taoist White Deer shut his mouth obediently, Ning Fan turned around and walked out of the cave. Only when he reached the back of the mountain did his anger subside slightly. He looked down on people like Taoist white deer. However, this kind of people really existed. In fact, they even existed in many corners of the cultivation world. He could not say that Taoist white deer's actions were definitely wrong. It was just that the two of them had different paths. Since that was the case, Ning Fan felt annoyed even if they just had a simple conversation. I didn't expect that my pleasant visit to this place would end up like this. I'm afraid I don't want to set foot in this place anymore. Ning Fan walked all the way to the back of the mountain and found Duolan in a remote place. Duolan was kneeling alone in front of a short grave. Her face did not have too much sadness. However, even though she was not sad, she did not know why she did not want to get up or leave after kneeling. What kind of person is my mother? Everyone scolded my mother for being a promiscuous bitch. However, Duolan did not think that her mother was that lowly. In her heart, her mother must be the most beautiful and holy woman in the world. Even though she had never seen her mother before, she firmly believed in this matter. Duolan touched the old tombstone that was slightly weathered. She did not know why, but she recalled the time when her father brought her to the 100 Flowers Peak when they were still young. That day, her father's eyes were blood-red like an angry lion. He was so terrifying and crazy. In the end, they fought their way to the first auxiliary peak and arrived in front of her mother's tombstone. They touched the tombstone. Their eyes were filled with sorrow and tears of blood. Duolan had heard from some of Chu Lai's elders that she had inherited her mother's beauty. She was very similar to her mother, especially that head of long red hair that was hot to the eyes. Duolan once guessed that since she was very young, her father had neglected her and did not want to meet her often. It was not because he did not like her, but because he was afraid to see her face. Her face was similar to her mother's. That was why she had never blamed her father. She always believed that her mother, who she could not even remember her face, clearly loved her. Her father, who was always cold to her, loved her as well. This was also the belief that kept her going until today. It's time to go. Ning Fan's voice suddenly sounded from behind. Duolan's face was slightly red. She stood up and saw Ning Fan, who was going down the mountain. There were no words of concern. But since Senior came here to look for me, it should be an act of concern. He really is very similar to my cold and taciturn father. Duolan patted the dust on her knees and ran to catch up with Ning Fan. They walked towards the miasma at the foot of the mountain path. Goodbye, mother. After Lan Er completes her father's last wish and reinvigorates Chu Lai's bloodline, I will come to see you again. No matter how difficult it is, Lan Er will do it. I will definitely do it. Because Lan Er is your and father's daughter. Chapter 10:21. From that day onwards, Ning Fan never set foot on the first secondary peak again. Venerable White Deer also never invited him again. Other than the first secondary peak, which was an exception, the other peak lords who invited Ning Fan had a good impression of him. In the days that followed, they often invited Ning Fan to their residences. Ning Fan naturally did not reject such a matter that would benefit both sides. Moreover, he still had a large number of spiritual fruits given to him by venerated immortal Ming Feng. As he ate them day and night, his cultivation base would improve a lot every day. He also realized that the spiritual fruits he ate were basically spiritual fruits that were 1 million years old and above. They were quite expensive in the Great Humble Clan. Unfortunately, ordinary mid-void shedding realm cultivators would need at least 1 million years of hard cultivation to accumulate their magic power to the limit. Even if Ning Fan had the help of spiritual fruits and the effect of a 3 orifices ancient god, his cultivation base was still far from reaching the peak of the mid-void shedding realm. Other than discussing the Tao and visiting friends, Ning Fan would spend the rest of his time on the cliff where he fought against the 100 Flowers Sovereign. Currently, this cliff was already filled with devil chi. Ordinary Buddha cultivators did not dare to approach this place at all in case they were contaminated by the devil chi. There were also cultivators from the 100 Flowers sect who took turns to expel the devil chi day and night. However, the effect was minimal. It would probably be difficult to succeed without at least 100 years. There were originally some plants on the cliff. However, due to the influence of the devil chi, they withered and died one after another as if their vitality had been cut off by the devil chi. Only a few clusters of carefree orchids on the cliff did not have their vitality devoured by the devil chi. They were still growing tenaciously in the devil chi. Since this flower could resist Ningfan's devil chi, it really deserved to be one of the 10 great Buddha flowers of the middle state. It was the 19th day since Ningfan came to the 100 Flowers Peak. Today, Ningfan visited some of his fellow Taoists as usual. Then he came to this cliff to meditate. 3,000 zhang away from the cliff, there were about 10 to 20 cultivators of the 100 Flowers sect who were expelling the devil chi. When they saw Ningfan, they greeted him and temporarily retreated. They did not perform any exorcism techniques to avoid disturbing Ningfan's meditation. During these days, they were already used to Ningfan's daily visits. Knowing that he was meditating here, they naturally did not dare to disturb him while he was meditating. After all the cultivators left, Ningfan sat down at the center of the cliff as usual. Not far away from him were a few clusters of carefree orchids that were as pale as sickly beauties. These carefree orchids were full of vitality and contained an extremely strong Buddhist nature, allowing them to survive in a certain degree of devil chi. Ningfan's eyes swept across the few stalks of carefree orchids in front of him and stopped for a moment, as if he was attracted by them. However, he quickly withdrew his gaze and continued with the enlightenment he had been doing for the past few days. Every day, Ningfan would come to this cliff and carefully review every scene of the duel between him and the 100 Flower Sovereign. Today was no exception. Even though the battle that day was only a battle of Taos and not a real battle, the comprehension contained within it was definitely not small. Just like the initial comprehension of the ancient devil Tao of destruction, the various uses of the Tao image, and the awe-inspiring state of mind when facing a dignified immortal emperor. Of course, what was most worthy of Ningfan's comprehension was the Tao elephant attack that he launched at the very last moment, which completely defeated the 100 Flower Sovereign, Ancient Demon Mountain Breaking Strike. With Ningfan's comprehension ability at the second level of the heavenly being realm, he could easily create ordinary abilities on his own. This Ancient Demon Mountain Breaking Strike was just Ningfan's natural counterattack, when he saw the 100 Flower Sovereign transforming the mountain's momentum into the Buddha shadow. Even though it was just a random ability, Ningfan was in a high-pressure state when he was fighting against an immortal emperor at that time. His state of mind, Tao comprehension, devil sense and willpower were all at 120%. Therefore, the creation of this technique was quite extraordinary. The principle of this technique was to condense the power of the Tao image on a punch, using the will of destruction to strengthen the inside of the punch while using the power of destruction to destroy the outside of the punch. With the help of this technique, Ningfan's Tao elephant attack, which was not weak in the first place, instantly exploded with more than twice its original power. It was just like a violent attack. It was precisely because this violent attack was too strong that the 100 Flower Sovereign did not even have the time to condense enough power of the Tao elephant to resist it, and was directly defeated. The Ancient Demon Mountain Breaking Strike is actually an application of the Ancient Devil Tao of destruction. It's a way to use the power of the Ancient Devil. It's a kind of ability that only ancient devils can use. The profound meaning of this ability is to instantly unleash the power of the ancient devil in one's body to achieve the effect of a violent attack. In other words, the Ancient Demon Mountain Breaking Strike that I created in the past is a kind of violent attack ability. It can double the power of my attack. It was a kind of violent attack ability that only belonged to the ancient devil lineage. There were very few abilities that belonged to the ancient devil lineage in the world. For example, Immortal Emperor Mo Zhong's life-killing technique was one of them. Today, Ningfan had actually created another one of his own. If it was during the devil conferral era, such an act would definitely shock all the devils. It was a pioneering act. It seemed like a stroke of luck or a coincidence. However, which one of the creation of the famous abilities in the world would not be influenced by luck? If it wasn't for the natural process of the ancient devil comprehension, if it wasn't for the domineering act of facing an immortal emperor, he certainly wouldn't have such luck. In the past, I used the method of condensing my Tao image into a fist to launch this attack. Thus, this attack only has the destructive power of a violent attack against the enemy's Tao image. However, if I condense my ancient devil essence qi into my fist and launch the attack in the same way, this ancient demon mountain breaking strike will no longer be limited to the destructive power of the Tao image. Instead, it will be a true ancient devil body technique. Theoretically, that's true. However, it's quite difficult to achieve this. Moreover, this ancient demon mountain breaking strike is still in its embryonic form. It hasn't been perfected yet. Ning Fan sat cross-legged on the ground. With a thought, countless runes of the devil Tao surrounded his body. Black light shone brightly and black qi billowed. Green light flickered in his eyes. At this moment, the Tao comprehension of the second level of the heavenly being realm was fully exerted. He kept deducing the flaws and shortcomings of the ancient demon mountain breaking strike. He constantly used the will of the ancient devil Tao of destruction to refine his ancient devil essence qi, causing the devil nature of his essence qi to deepen day by day. The 20th day, the 21st day, the 22nd day. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. The time for the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition was approaching day by day. The spiritual fruits that venerated Clear Peak Immortal gave Ning Fan had already been eaten up. Many of the treasures of those peak lords had also been eaten by Ning Fan. Gradually, they felt embarrassed to invite Ning Fan. As such, Ning Fan did not want to be an unwelcome guest. Instead, he stayed at the cliff of the main peak and perfected some of the details of the ancient demon mountain breaking strike. On the other hand, Ouyang Nuan's progress in nourishing the divine essence pills was very smooth. Currently, she had already nurtured 12 divine essence pills. However, according to Zhang Yu, this number was still far from enough. At least 100 divine essence pills were needed to heal the 100-flower sovereign's injuries. There was still a long way to go. Consuming the divine essence pills had greatly depleted Ouyang Nuan's medicine soul. Fortunately, Ning Fan had already given Ouyang Nuan the 10,000 years old medicinal marrow that Tamu gave her. It was enough to replenish the depletion of her medicine soul. On the other hand, old Wu was a little restless. These days, he often took out his treasure-searching tortoise and looked around as if he was searching for some kind of treasure. Unfortunately, the search was not going smoothly. Sometimes he would frown and think hard. Sometimes he would sigh. Sometimes his small eyes would light up. Sometimes he would feel lost. As for Zhang Yu, he brazenly took the treasures from the 100-flower sovereign's palace to stabilize the body of his incomplete primordial spirit. His complexion was getting rosier day by day. After all, he was an old friend of the 100-flower sovereign. Thus, he did not need to be courteous with him. As the time for the second round was approaching, strange carriages of spirit beasts began to enter the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak one after another. The people who were sitting on the carriages were basically cultivators from the grasslands outside of the Middle State. As soon as they entered the place, they were directly led to the main peak by the young man with the flesh wings. After that, these people also became the distinguished guests of the 100 Flowers Peak. One by one, they stayed in the guest rooms of the cave residences on the main peak. However, none of them came out of their rooms. They did not seem to be visiting each other. All of them were quietly waiting for the 100-flower sovereign to summon them. Ning Fan asked the young man about it. The latter seemed to have received an order. He did not hide anything from Ning Fan and told him everything. These cultivators came from more than 10 different grasslands, and the tribes they belonged to were the tribes that won first place in their respective grassland minor competitions. The 3,000 tribes of Debay were dependent on the 5 emperors of the central province, and the tribes of these people were dependent on the Emperor of 100 Flowers. As the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle approached, they naturally had to pay their respects to the Emperor of 100 Flowers. Ning Fan pondered for a moment and understood the profound meaning behind it. The 100 Blossoms Emperor's injuries are too severe. Even if he recovers, it is very likely that his cultivation level will drop. Therefore, he is determined to win the South Sea Spring Water for the second round. Zhang Yu, and the others entering Debay wasn't within the 100-flower Thearcha's calculations. With the 100-flower Thearcha's shrewdness, he must have already made arrangements for this. These tribes were the 100-flower Thearcha's previous reliance. According to the information Ning Fan obtained, There would always be 108 teams participating in the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition in the past. Apart from the Central Plains, the other 107 grasslands would be represented by the tribe that won the minor competition. The number of people in each team could not exceed 10. As for the Central States team, each of the 5 emperors of the Central State would give a few spots, and the strongest among them would participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing by themselves. The second round of the contest for the mausoleum had a strict limit on the age of one's bones. Those with a bone age exceeding 5 million years were not allowed to participate in the second round. Therefore, very few primordial immortal sovereigns would appear in the second round. Most of them were just thought fragments or void renders. Among the 100-flower emperor's subordinates, there weren't even a few at the late stage of the thought shatterer realm. Obviously, it wasn't that there weren't any more powerful people, but because of the second round's bone age limit, they were eliminated. If the second round is filled with cultivators of this level, it will be an opportunity for me. 3 days later, 100-flower emperor suddenly sent someone to invite Ning Fan to the inner hall of the cavern. Under the guidance of a few young men with flesh wings, Ning Fan came to the inner hall of the cave residence. He glanced around and found that there were already many people waiting here. Most of them were subordinates of 100 Flowers Peak. Could this person be? As soon as Ning Fan arrived, some of them immediately noticed Ning Fan's outer cultivator attire. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Ning Fan. Obviously, these people had already heard of a shocking news that had spread across the entire Middle State on their way here. An outer cultivator had defeated 100-flower emperor head-on in a duel between Dao images in the 100 Flowers Peak. The junior succeeds the senior. It was unprecedented. Lord Ning, please wait here for a moment. His Excellency will be here soon. The few young men with flesh wings greeted Ning Fan respectfully and retreated to the side. The inner hall immediately fell into dead silence. Even though some of them were extremely curious about Ning Fan, none of them came over to talk to him. The atmosphere became a little dull. Fortunately, the dull atmosphere did not last for too long. Very soon, 7 to 8 women walked out from the other side of the hall. They were the personal maids of 100-flower emperor. Behind the maids, 100-flower emperor walked into the hall step by step on a red carpet like a female emperor. Every step she took carried a domineering aura. Her beautiful eyes swept across the hall coldly. All the subordinates of 100-flower emperor could not withstand her aura. They lowered their heads in shock and cupped their fists to pay their respects. Greetings to His Excellency. Dispense with the formalities. Are all of you the participants sent by your respective clans? 100-flower emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. A hint of disappointment flashed across her eyes. If her subordinates only have people with such strength to participate in the second round, their chances of getting the South Sea spring water would not be high. After all, only those who get into the top 3 would be rewarded with the South Sea spring water. According to the insider information that 100-flower emperor obtained, among the participating teams, there were no less than 20 teams with late thought fragmentation realm cultivators. There were 9 teams with peak thought fragmentation realm cultivators, and 3 teams with immortal venerables. Among the 3 immortal venerables teams, with the strength of these subordinates, it was almost impossible for them to get into the top 3. Unfortunately, the second round of the competition was not as simple as a duel. They were not allowed to use supplementary items such as the attack of an immortal emperor. Sure enough, I can only rely on this outer cultivator that Zhongyu brought along for this trip. The 100-flower emperor glanced at Ning Fan imperceptibly, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a cunning smile. Even though this person's Dao image is powerful, the second round is not about the Dao image. Having a powerful Dao image is useless. However, this person's cultivation base is an eternal immortal venerable. This point can be used to our advantage. As for his bone age is terrifyingly young. It seems to be only around 40,000 years old, which completely meets the standard of reference. Cultivating to become an eternal immortal venerable in just 40,000 years? The 100-flower emperor did not think much of it. She would never believe such a thing. She thought to herself that Ning Fan was probably using a secret technique to conceal his bone age. Even an immortal emperor like her who had attained the Tao in ancient times could not see through it. It was a pretty good secret technique. If he could hide it from her, he could also hide it from the other 4 emperors of the Middle Province. Thus, it would not affect the second round of the grand competition. The reason why I called all of you here today is because the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition is approaching. I want to give all of you some benefits. Later, I will open the 100 Flowers secret vault. All of you can enter freely. Take as many things as you can. I won't be stingy. As soon as the 100 Flower Emperor's voice fell, countless people in the inner hall gasped. The 100 Flowers secret vault. Isn't that the 100 Flower Emperor's treasure vault? Even though they were her subordinates with lowly statuses, they were actually fortunate enough to enter the immortal emperor's treasure vault. In the past, didn't only the immortal venerables and immortal kings who had made great contributions to the 100 Flower Emperor get to enter the vault? Rumor has it that the 100 Flowers secret vault was filled with formations and illusory techniques. It was an opportunity but also a kind of test. How many things one could take would depend on one's strength. Rumor has it that the 100 Flower Emperor had once condensed her comprehension of the Tao in the first half of her life into a relic. Now, it was placed in the 100 Flowers secret vault, and no one had ever taken it before. Rumor has it that the 100 Flower Emperor's cultivation base in the Tao of formations was extremely high, far surpassing her peers. Her comprehension of the Tao of formations was also left in the 100 Flowers secret vault. There was also a rumor that the 100 Flower Emperor had planted a poison immortal of the 3 wilderness in the vault. It was a species of poisonous flower that no one knew where it came from. Just a drop of its venom could kill an eternal immortal venerable. Rumor has it that the 100 Flower Emperor smiled seductively. She was very satisfied with the surprised expressions of her subordinates. Suddenly she noticed Ning Fan's calm expression and could not help but frown. Is this brat looking down on my treasure vault? Well, she could not blame Ning Fan for being so calm. It was because he had seen too many good things. That was why he was a little calmer. Of course, it did not mean that he did not have any expectations for the so-called Immortal Emperor's treasure vault. Since it was an Immortal Emperor's treasure vault, he might really be able to obtain some items that would be helpful to his trip. Someone bring these people to my secret vault. Yes. A few young men with flesh wings led hundreds of subordinates out from one end of the inner hall. They walked along the winding path and no one knew where they were going. Ning Fan naturally followed them. He secretly took out the treasure-searching compass and hid it in his sleeve. The further they went, the more precious treasures the compass could sense. It seems like there are really a lot of good things ahead. After everyone left for a long time, the corner of the 100 Flower Emperor's mouth suddenly curled upwards. I wonder if that brat can successfully obtain the cold dew of releasing punishment. This is a good item that can temporarily freeze the punishment ring. It can suppress the seal of the punishment ring for a short period of time and restore his original cultivation base. It's just that the side effect is a little big. However, if I don't tell you, how would you know about this? Under the guidance of the young men with flesh wings, the group of cultivators came to the outside of the 100 Flower secret vault. The doors of the secret vault were 2 illusory stone doors. The restrictive power was extremely strong. Obviously, there were countless formations hidden inside. If anyone trespasses this place, they would definitely be obliterated by the formations. A young man with flesh wings who was the leader took out a token and waved it at the stone door. The stone door suddenly made a creaking sound and opened to both sides, revealing the space inside which was surrounded by illusory mist. This is the treasure space of the Venerable One. This stone door is the only entrance that can be used to enter and exit. The illusory techniques and restrictive spells inside are intricate and complicated. Whether you can really obtain the treasures inside depends on your strength. If you can't hold on inside, you can chant the incantation, and you will be teleported out immediately. The incantation is... The young man with flesh wings told everyone the incantation, and told them about the dangers inside. Hearing that there was a certain degree of danger in the secret vault, everyone's heart trembled. However, there was a little hesitation, and they did not immediately enter. However, this hesitation did not last long. A few bold people took the lead and entered first. Then, one after another, the subordinates rushed into the secret vault. So what if it's risky? In front of them was the immortal emperor's treasure vault. What's the harm in taking some risks for it? Ning Fan was not in a hurry to enter. Instead, he observed the formation and restrictive spells at the entrance of the stone door for a while before stepping into it. As soon as he entered the stone door, he immediately felt a teleportation force surging under his feet. In the next moment, he was forcefully teleported to a peach forest by the formation of this place. This treasure space was quite vast. Besides, it had an extremely strong confusion and restriction on spirit sense. If one stays here for a long time, it would even cause certain damage to his sea of consciousness. Just when Ning Fan wanted to spread out his spirit sense to explore this place, he felt a suction force forcefully devouring his spirit sense. Without saying anything, he cut off that trace of spirit sense and his expression turned solemn. I really can't underestimate the formation of this place. However, if he is given enough time, it would not be difficult for him to see through the formation of this place. As for the damage that the formation of this place could cause to his sea of consciousness, it was directly broken by him using the secret word force. Ning Fan secretly activated the secret word force. While searching in the peach forest, he also memorized the formation under his feet. This peach forest seemed to be one of the places where treasures were kept in this treasure space. Even with Ning Fan's cultivation base in the Tao of Formations, it still took him a long time to walk out from the other end of the peach forest. As soon as he got out of the peach forest, he saw a golden house. Inside the golden house, there was a 9 revolutions golden pill. It was a pill that could increase one's cultivation base. Its name was Putua pill. This pill was extremely famous in the Great Bay clan. Ning Fan had also heard some news about this pill. He heard that this pill was different from ordinary pills. Its medicinal effect was unusually overbearing. The medicinal power of a single pill could even match 10 thought fragmentation Tao fruits. Of course, the concoction of this pill was also extremely complicated. The medicinal ingredients were even harder to find. It was said that even some gold pill refinement masters of the Great Bay clan who had been famous for a long time would only succeed in 1 or 2 out of 10 attempts. Moreover, they could only concoct 1 Putua pill at the same time in each attempt. If they concoct 2 pills at the same time, they would definitely fail, and it would be hard to control. He did not expect to get a Putua pill for free. Ning Fan briefly examined the pill, and found that there was nothing unusual about it. Then he swallowed it. After refining it for a while, the cultivation bases of his ancient gods and ancient demons improved significantly again. Ordinary thought fragmentation Tao fruits would definitely not dare to do this. However, Ning Fan was a 9th Nirvana heavenly devil. His physical body was fully capable of withstanding the medicinal effect of this pill. All he needed was to slowly refine it later on. After that, he found the right path and continued to search the place. This young man is actually so fast. He has already passed through the formation of the peach forest and obtained the Putua pill. In the inner palace, the 100 Flowers Empress seemed to have sensed something and she frowned slightly. She had spent a lot of effort to set up this formation. Even the immortal venerables and immortal kings on the secondary peaks would not be able to walk out of it without a few days of effort. Thus they could only give up on the peach forest and return to where they came from. She seemed to have underestimated this young man's formation mastery. Ning Fan left the golden house in the peach forest and continued forward, passing through the illusory mist. Unknowingly, he arrived at a large river. The water in this river was none other than 8th grade Tao spring of extraordinary quality. Moreover, there was a whole river of 8th grade Tao spring water. Unfortunately, it seems like the Tree of 7 Wonders can only continue to grow if it is watered by 6th grade and above Tao springs. Even though there are a lot of these Tao springs, they are not beneficial to the Tree of 7 Wonders. However, he could take all of them away and use them to water another plant, the 4 Emperor's Arhut pine. Even if he could not use them all, he could also use them to trade. One should know that in the Dabei clan, ordinary goods were traded with gold and silver while high-grade cultivation materials were usually traded with other goods. If he uses this amount of Dao spring water to trade, he would certainly be able to get a lot of good items. He remembered that the 100 Flowers Empress had mentioned before that as long as he was strong enough, he could take anything he wanted from the secret vault. Since she had said that, he naturally would not be courteous with her. He directly used his ability and broke the restrictions on the river one by one. Then he took the entire river of Dao spring water away. They can even break the restrictions of the Dao River. The 100 Flowers Empress sensed it again. Given her identity as an immortal emperor, losing a river of Dao spring water was still a little painful. According to her calculations, when these people entered the secret vault, they could at most break 1 or 2 restrictions each. Moreover, most of the restrictions they broke would only be low-grade ones. What they took away would only be the items that she had arranged for them in advance. However, Ning Fan was an exception. She had underestimated his cultivation base in the Tao of formations. Her arrangement was that Ning Fan would be trapped in the peach forest and had no choice but to leave the peach forest and move according to the route that she had arranged. However, Ning Fan directly rushed out of the peach forest and headed in another direction to collect the treasures. Someone, summon the 10,000 ancient experts of the 7 peaks here. Yes. Very soon, the 7 peak lords of the auxiliary peaks arrived. Even Ming Feng, who had yet to recover from his severe injuries, had also arrived. As soon as the 7 of them arrived, the 100 Flowers Empress did not explain anything to them. She just handed each of them a row of formation flags and ordered them to inject their magic power into the flags. She could have done it herself, but she was unwilling to use her magic power recklessly when she had yet to recover from her severe injuries. Thus, she sent her subordinates to do it. The other 6 ancient experts were baffled. They did not understand the meaning behind the 100 Flowers Empress action. Only enlightened being Bai Lu, who was the leader of the auxiliary peaks, could guess a thing or two. Inwardly, he was surprised. Aren't these the formation flags of the secret vault? Could it be that His Honor wants to make things difficult for someone in the secret vault by asking us to reinforce the formation of the secret vault? I heard that His Honor had given an order today to let all the subordinates enter the secret vault to choose their treasures. That little Ning Fan seems to be one of them. Could it be that His Honor's arrangement has led to some changes? The one who could cause such a change was naturally not those subordinates with mediocre cultivation bases. It was highly possible that it was Ning Fan. If he is going to make things difficult for this person, I might have to do something. Enlightened being Bai Lu immediately channeled a large amount of magic power into the formation flags. That day he was subdued by Ning Fan. Even though he did not dare to go against Ning Fan, he still held some resentment towards him. Today, he could take his revenge without facing Ning Fan directly. Naturally, he would not let go of this opportunity. The other 6 ancient monsters also channeled their magic power into the formation flags without any delay. Even venerated immortal Ming Feng also channeled his magic power, within a controllable range. With the reinforcement of the formation by the 7 ancient monsters, Ning Fan soon noticed the difference. After leaving the Great River, he continued to move forward, and arrived at a garden that was filled with poisonous mist. That poisonous mist was quite extraordinary. It actually gave him a sense of danger. It seemed like it was not an ordinary item. According to Ning Fan's plan, he was going to break the restriction of this place and take the poisonous item away. However, as soon as he tried to break the restriction, a vast amount of magic power spread out from the restriction, causing him to retreat continuously. The blood and qi in his chest churned violently. He only managed to stabilize his breathing after a long time. The restriction of this place is far stronger than the previous few places. This aroused Ning Fan's interest even more. Ning Fan had already activated the force character to its limit. With a wave of his hand, rays of golden light condensed from the great force of heaven and earth were shot out, hitting the weak points of the restriction of this place. However, it could not withstand Ning Fan's incessant attacks. Gradually, some immortal venerables who were channeling their magic power into the formation could no longer endure it. First was the heavily injured Ming Feng immortal venerable, then the other immortal venerables, then the 2nd peak's immortal king. I'm sorry to disappoint you. We were too far away, so it was difficult for us to control the formation on this flag. Someone broke the formation. The 6 of them remained calm. They only knew which Middle Prefecture Great Emperor was the one who broke the formation. Since they were competing with 100 Blossom Emperor, they didn't feel ashamed to lose to Middle Prefecture Great Emperor. Only Taoist Master Bailu was still struggling to hold on with an expression of disbelief. How could this be? How could that Ning Fan possibly have such a profound cultivation base in the Tao of formations? Even the formation laid down by the 100-Flower Empress and the magic power of the 7 ancient immortals could not stop him from advancing. Bang! Taoist Master Bailu was too slow in giving up and was affected by the backlash of the formation being broken. He felt a sharp pain in his knowledge sea and spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura weakened a little. His expression was one of extreme shock. Even if this person's Tao of formations was not as strong as his honor, it was not much weaker. It was not something he could win against. Forget it. It's my negligence. You guys can leave now. The 100-Flower Empress dismissed the 10,000 ancient immortals and frowned. She had already said that those who enter the secret vault could take the treasures by themselves based on their own strength. She would not go back on her words. Since she had already miscalculated this matter, she had no choice but to let Ning Fan wreak havoc in the treasure vault. In the treasure vault, Ning Fan broke the poisonous mist formation. When he saw a stalk of dark green flower which was filled with poisonous qi, he was slightly shocked. What a domineering poisonous qi! A single drop of this flower's poison was probably enough to poison an ancient immortal venerable to death. If it's the entire stalk of this poisonous flower, perhaps it could even poison an immortal king to death. Of course, this was not the only function of this flower. If it was just used to poison people, the 100-Flower Empress would not have valued it so much. If this flower is consumed, it seemed like it could greatly increase a cultivator's resistance against poison. Of course, the thought of consuming this flower made Ning Fan's hair stand on end even with his temperament. After all, even a supreme treasure like the God Exterminating Shield could not provide much help to Ning Fan when it came to consuming the poisonous flower internally. Ning Fan could only rely on his own strength to resist the poison of this flower and gradually absorb it to increase his own poison resistance. Difficult. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, consuming this flower recklessly was no different from courting death. However, Ning Fan did not mind keeping this flower temporarily. He would keep it by his side and slowly nurture it. It would not be too late for him to consume it when his cultivation base is higher in the future, when he is strong enough to resist the poison of this flower. Once his poison resistance is high, he would certainly be invincible when facing some old monsters who play with poison. So this flower is called the Triad Poison Immortal. Ning Fan's gaze swept across a stone tablet in the poison garden. Then he turned around and left the garden, walking in another direction. There were still many clues from the treasure-searching compass. There were definitely a lot of good items in this place. As Ning Fan's understanding of the formations in this place deepened, it actually became easier for him to move around. As for the other cultivators who entered the secret vault, they could no longer withstand the pressure of the formations in this place. Each of them chanted an incantation and teleported out of the secret vault. Each of them had gained something and all of them looked very excited. However, compared to Ning Fan, their gains were not worth mentioning at all. Time passed by slowly. The subordinates outside the treasure vault could no longer hold back the excitement in their hearts. They wanted to return to their respective rooms and consume some food to comprehend the new knowledge. However, the young men with the flesh wings refused to bring the subordinates away from this place. Their reason was that there was still one person who had not returned. Who, after such a long time, there was actually still someone who could endure in the secret vault. Only then did the subordinates realize that Ning Fan had not returned. He was still searching for treasures in the secret vault. Some of them were envious of him. How many benefits must he have obtained by staying in the secret vault for such a long time? Some of them even exclaimed in admiration. Rumor has it that this person is an immortal venerated throughout the ages whose cultivation base is sealed. Now it seems like even if his cultivation base is sealed, he is still not someone that an ordinary thought-breaking old monster could compare to. He is indeed worthy of being an expert who defeated an immortal emperor in the Tao Elephant realm. His reputation is indeed well-deserved. Ning Fan did not know about the exclamations of the subordinates outside. At this moment he was wholeheartedly searching for treasures in the secret vault, and continuously increasing his harvest. He immediately consumed another patala pill without any change in his expression. There was an ancient dual cultivation scripture, which recorded the cultivation technique of the Buddhist gate of Joy Zen. Since Ning Fan had the yin-yang transformation, he naturally would not cultivate the Buddhist gate of Joy Zen. However, he could still obtain some confirmation by reading it. A small hill of 9 revolutions lead pills and silver pills. Now he has the capital to barter with other items. A large orchard of 1 million years old spiritual fruits. Ning Fan naturally plucked all of them. There was also a large number of ancient pill recipes, great infernal cultivation methods and medicine soul secret techniques. Ning Fan also knew how to restrain himself. He did not directly take away the original copies, but made a copy of each of them. In the end, after taking a big round, Ning Fan returned to the vicinity of the peach forest where he first went. He had been to the peach forest before. Naturally, he did not plan to enter it again. He thought that he had already walked around 60 to 70% of the area, and it was about time for him to leave. If he goes overboard, he might really anger the 100 Flowers' great emperor. Just as he was about to chant an incantation, a pungent wind suddenly blew towards him. Within the pungent wind, buzzing sounds could be heard continuously. It was a blood bee that was the size of a thumb. All of a sudden it attacked him. It was just a blood bee, but its chi was not weaker than the peak thought fragmentation realm. Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. He expanded the protective golden light of the god exterminating shield to 3 zhang away from his body, and easily blocked the blood bee's attack. The blood bee seemed to let out a soft cry of surprise. However, it also seemed like it had never made a sound before. All of a sudden, it turned around and fled in another direction. As if it was afraid of Ning Fan, it went into the illusory mist and Ning Fan could no longer find it. Trying to escape? Ning Fan's eyes flickered. He turned his hand and took out the treasure-searching compass. He injected the trace of chi that he captured from the blood bee into the compass. This compass could not only be used to search for treasures, but it could also be used to search for people. There was nothing in the world that it could not search. As such, even though the illusory mist was strong, Ning Fan could still easily determine the direction that the blood bee was fleeing to and chase after it. The place that the bee was fleeing to might contain some precious treasures. As for this blood bee, it was highly likely that it was the treasure-protecting spiritual insect. Ning Fan chased after it for an unknown period of time. Suddenly, a towering blood light penetrated through the illusory mist in front of him. Further ahead was a sea of blood that stretched to the sky. However, it was frozen by something and turned into a sea of ice. In the sky above the frozen sea of blood, there was a floating profound ice platform. On top of the profound ice platform, cold chi that could devour people kept coming out. The coldness of the cold chi was so strong that even a cultivator like Ning Fan who had attained the 5 elements avoidance realm shivered slightly. What is this? On the jade platform, there was a jade plate. On the jade plate, there was only a drop of blue, half-frozen liquid. It was this drop of liquid that was emitting a frightening cold chi that froze the entire sea of blood below it. Even the Xing ring in Ning Fan's body became a little sluggish in the face of this frightening cold chi. It seemed like it was a little difficult to seal Ning Fan's cultivation base. The moment Ning Fan's blood calamity realm got close to the liquid, there was a tiny bit of the seal that was lifted. Chapter 1022. The blood wasps that lured Ning Fan to this place had already disappeared. Ning Fan stared at the sea of blood for a long time. Suddenly, he leaped onto the frozen sea of blood. After a few flashes, he arrived at the bottom of the floating profound ice platform. With another flash, his body moved like a ghost. When he opened his palm, there was already a drop of dark blue icy liquid in his palm. It was the drop on the profound ice platform. This item seems to have a suppressive effect on the punishment rings in my body. The icy liquid gave off a bone-piercing cold feeling, but it did not cause any frostbite. It seemed like it only had the effect of freezing certain things. When he touched the icy liquid at a close distance, The 8 punishment rings in his body had obvious changes. The seal power that flowed in the rings actually froze a little from the edge. After the seal froze, the cultivation base of Jieshue that was originally sealed was unsealed a little. It was just a little, but it was enough to surprise Ningfan. When I went to the ferocious domain continent in the past, I went to many cave dwellings of ancient cultivators. There was a stone inscription that mentioned something called releasing cold dew. The releasing cold dew is an ancient treasure of the Dabei clan. It has the magical effect of freezing and sealing power. There were some ancient cultivators who wanted to cultivate the Tao of ascetic monks. They asked the saints of Dabei to suppress their cultivation base with the punishment rings to temper themselves. However, there were always risks and killings in the cultivation world. These ascetic monks also had times where they had no choice but to use their sealed cultivation base. During such times, the ascetic monks would usually not break the punishment rings. It is said that the punishment rings have some unknown benefits, and they are reluctant to break them easily. Whenever they are in danger, they would usually choose to consume a little releasing cold dew. That way, they can temporarily recover some of their sealed cultivation base without damaging the punishment rings. The time and amount of recovery is related to the amount of the releasing cold dew that they consume. Ningfan recalled the stone inscription that he had seen before and guessed inwardly. Could this drop of icy liquid be the releasing cold dew? Judging from the suppressive effect of this drop of icy liquid on the punishment rings, it might really be this item. Unfortunately, there were too few records about the releasing cold dew in those stone inscriptions. Thus, Ningfan could not confirm it and could only speculate. The punishment rings were really a headache. It was not that it was difficult to break the punishment ring. If Ningfan wanted to, he could break it at any time and recover his true cultivation base. However, the troublesome thing was that the real meaning of Xinghuan was that the despicable tribe had a restriction on external cultivators. Once this restriction was broken, it would be considered as violating the laws of the great humble race, and would attract the pursuit of the 5 thearchs of the Middle Province. The punishment ring could not be broken. Just because he couldn't shatter it didn't mean that he couldn't find another way to recover his cultivation. Obviously, this drop of ice liquid was such a trick. Even if this item was not the releasing frost dew, it most likely had a similar suppressive effect. Just by holding this thing in his hand, he could freeze some of the punishment ring seal. If he took some, the freezing power would directly suppress the punishment ring in his dantian, and the effect would be even better. This item could be used as another trump card in the second round of seizing the mausoleum. If he could not get the South Sea spring water with his sealed cultivation base, he would not mind consuming a little bit of the icy liquid and participate in the second round with his unsealed cultivation base. If it's for the South Sea spring water, I think the 100 Flowers Great Emperor would certainly not blame me for taking this item. Besides, I even suspect that the blood wasps that lured me here were sent by the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. As he thought of this, Ningfan's eyes flashed with a hint of vigilance. He checked the icy liquid and did not find anything unusual. Then he kept it. Just as he was about to leave, a ray of bloodlight suddenly shot out from the frozen sea of blood. It made a buzzing sound and rushed towards Ningfan. Ningfan's eyes turned solemn. Just as he was about to defend himself, the bloodlight suddenly stopped and revealed itself. It was the blood wasps that launched the attack just now. However, this time, the blood wasps did not seem to have the intention to attack him. Instead, they landed on the icy surface of the sea of blood. After they landed on the ground, they turned into a young lady wearing a pink dress in the middle of a series of blood-red runes. The lady's body was emitting multicolored light, giving people a feeling of holiness. Beneath her long black hair was her almost perfect body. Her body was also emitting a delicate fragrance that resembled flowers and honey. The only thing that was out of place was her pair of bare feet, which were chained with iron chains. When she walked, they made clanking sounds, making her look like a prisoner. After the lady appeared, she seemed to be hesitant. However, she quickly made up her mind. She dragged the iron chains closer to Ningfan and bowed to him. This sinful woman greets young master. Please forgive me for attacking young master just now. Then she waved her palm and rays of blood light shot out, turning into a nearly transparent blood-red beehive, covering the area of Tenjiang around Ningfan. That beehive did not pose any threat to Ning Fan. However, it had an extremely strong barrier against spirit sense. Perhaps even an immortal emperor would not be able to easily break the beehive and see what was inside. Obviously, it was an extremely powerful isolation ability. It seemed like this lady had something to tell Ning Fan, but she was worried about the 100 Flowers' great emperor, who was the owner of the treasure vault. Thus, she purposely concealed it. Miss, what do you mean? Ning Fan's eyes were calm as he scrutinized the lady in front of him, secretly guessing the purpose of her visit. The lady bowed again and pleaded. Young master is a powerful cultivator. Please save me from the sea of suffering. Save you from the sea of suffering? Do you mean to truly save your main demon soul from this sea of blood? Ning Fan frowned. This lady was none other than the blood wasp that attacked him just now. Ning Fan did not get a clear look at her. Now he realized that she did not have a physical body, but a trace of her demon soul. Moreover, it was not a main demon soul but an existence similar to a second demon soul. Humans could cultivate their main primordial spirit and second primordial spirit. Demon cultivators could also cultivate their main demon soul and second demon soul. With Ning Fan's rain technique, he could vaguely sense a trace of demon chi that was deeply hidden under the ice layer of the sea of blood. It seemed to be suppressed. It was the same chi as the blood wasp. However, compared to the blood wasp, it was a few times stronger. It must be the main demon soul of this lady. A main and a secondary. The cultivation base of this lady's secondary demon soul had reached the peak thought fragmentation realm. As for the cultivation base of her main demon soul, it seemed to have reached the second tribulation immortal venerable realm. This lady also seemed to have cultivated some kind of secret technique that allowed her to conceal even the mind-reading technique, preventing Ning Fan from peeking into her mind. It's not simple. Young master, please understand. I was originally a wasp demon born in ancient times. Even though I'm a demon, I have never harmed anyone. Because I admired Buddhism, I became the disciple of the first master of 100 Flowers Peak, enlightened Gu Hua. I listened to his teachings and cultivated diligently. Gradually, I gained my cultivation base, and even became the spiritual beast guardian of 100 Flowers Peak. After that, enlightened Gu Hua failed to break through the seventh tribulation, and died in the heavenly tribulation. Thousands of years later, the second master of 100 Flowers Peak came and appointed me as the spiritual beast guardian of the mountain. After several generations, I have always been cultivating in 100 Flowers Peak. I never had any other thoughts until the fourth master of 100 Flowers Peak, Ji Shirling, came. When she mentioned the name Ji Shirling, the blood wasp actually held her head in pain. It was as if there was a restriction on her demon soul that prevented her from mentioning this name casually. After a while, the pain finally disappeared. Ji Shirling? Ning Fan was slightly surprised. This name was a little unfamiliar. Ji Shirling is the common name of the current 100 Flowers Emperor. I'm afraid he doesn't use it anymore. The blood wasp endured the restriction and explained. Miss, why were you imprisoned here by the 100 Flowers Emperor? Ning Fan pondered for a while, and still asked. I angered Ji Shirling because of some matters. The blood wasp seemed to be a little embarrassed to speak her mind. After hesitating for a moment, she continued. Actually, when Ji Shirling first took over as the master of 100 Flowers Peak, he treated me quite well. However, 1 year after that, he suddenly asked me to sacrifice my body to seduce a man. However, what I admire is the orthodox Buddhist Dharma. I have always been cultivating my body and mind. How could I be willing to give myself to someone else and lose my primordial yin? That's why I rejected him sternly. However, I didn't expect that I would anger Ji Shirling. In a fit of anger, he destroyed my physical body, extracted my demon soul, and even suppressed my demon soul under this blood sea. Fortunately, I'm an expert in the soul separation technique. Even though I couldn't break through the blood sea and escape, I gradually cultivated a second demon soul, and secretly broke free from the blood sea with my separated soul. Unfortunately, this separated soul was soon discovered by Ji Shirling. She also imprisoned it in this place with a powerful technique. Compared to my main demon soul, which is suppressed at the bottom of the blood sea, Even though my second demon soul can obtain a certain degree of freedom and wander outside the blood sea, it can't go too far away from it. Besides, every few months, this blood sea will have a blood sense tide. At that time, I will have to suffer the pain of the tide pouring into my soul. It's worse than death. The blood wasp's eyes flashed with hatred. So you hope that I will take the risk of offending the 100 Flowers Emperor and rescue you from this place? Ning Fan asked with a frown. It was just a treasure hunt in the treasury. He did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. It was unwise to provoke the 100 Flowers Emperor for a woman he did not know. Young master, you must be joking. I'm not related to you at all. How would I dare to expect you to do so much for a stranger like me? To tell you the truth, even though I'm being suppressed here, I also have some arrangements outside. I've been preparing this escape plan for a long time. Even though I need your help, I don't need you to do anything that will anger Ji Shirling in the treasury. There won't be any risk of offending him. You don't have to worry about this. I just want to ask you to find someone in the middle state and give her something. As long as I can accomplish this task, I have 60 to 70% confidence that I can escape from this place with my own strength. Even if I really infuriate Ji Shirling, he certainly won't blame you for it. If you're willing to help me and I manage to escape, I'll certainly reward you with a satisfactory reward. Reward only after the matter is over. Ning Fan looked at the blood wasp lady without batting an eyelid. Inwardly, however, he was secretly calculating. It seems like this blood wasp lady already has an extremely perfect escape plan. All she needs is someone's help to find someone in the outside world and pass her something. On the surface, this matter seems to be as easy as lifting a finger. However, is there really no risk in this matter? Is there a deeper reason why the 100 Flowers Emperor suppressed the blood wasp lady here? Is it really like what the blood wasp lady said? Was she suppressed because she refused to seduce a certain man? In Ning Fan's eyes, the 100 Flowers Emperor was temperamental and gloomy. However, she was not someone who did not know how to restrain herself. On the contrary, from the fact that she could endure Ning Fan's offense several times, it could be seen that she was the kind of person who was extremely forbearing in order to achieve great things. Would such a person really suppress the spiritual beast that had served the master of the 100 Flowers sect for several generations, just because of a moment of anger? Ning Fan was more willing to believe that there was another reason for this matter. In fact, it was highly possible that the reason was even more important. There was another point. Was the 100 Flowers Emperor unaware of the blood wasp lady's escape plan? Or did he already know about it? Or maybe he already had a backup plan, and everything was under his control. He was just waiting for the blood wasp lady to escape and fall into his trap. Then he would reel in the net and complete his scheme. It couldn't be said that there was no such possibility. Ning Fan could not be blamed for being so cautious. The waters of the 100 Flowers Peak were really a little too deep. The existence of the dignified 100 Flowers Emperor might just be an illusion technique. This matter was already very strange. Now the suppression of the blood sea seemed to be something else. Thus, Ning Fan could not help but think about it further. It seems like just verbal gratitude won't be able to move young master. Young master is really a hard-hearted person. The blood wasp lady kept silent for a while, and continued. To be honest, young master, Ji Shirling has actually set you up. Unfortunately, young master has yet to notice it. Set me up? What do you mean? Ning Fan's expression did not show it on his face. Inwardly, however, he was recalling everything that he had done since he came to the 100 Flowers Peak. Eventually, he thought of that drop of ice liquid. Could it be that there's really something wrong with this item? Young master doesn't know that it wasn't a coincidence that I attacked you today. I was ordered by Ji Shirling to lure young master to this place. His purpose was to lure young master into taking away this drop of releasing cold dew. It really is the releasing cold dew. It was really arranged by the 100 Flowers Emperor in advance. If I'm not mistaken, young master should be an external cultivator, right? You definitely don't know much about the releasing cold dew. It's no wonder. Even among the venerables and immortal kings of the great humble immortal realms, only a few of them truly knew about it. I've served enlightened Gu Hua before, and I've heard about the drawbacks of this item from him. Enlightened Gu Hua divided the 100 immortal herbs into dozens of subjects. This item belongs to the poppy family. Those who consume this item are like ordinary people who consume opium poppy. If they consume too much of it, they will develop drug addiction. After that, they will need to consume this item continuously. Day after day, the drug addiction will gradually deepen, and it will gradually destroy the cultivator's Tao foundation, causing the cultivator's cultivation base to regress day by day. In ancient times, there were ascetic monks who consumed this item. They weren't afraid of the drug addiction, and they even used the drug addiction to temper their hearts. However, not many people could truly resist the drug addiction, and there were many people who had their Tao destroyed because of it. Ji Shirling didn't give this item to young master directly. Instead, he lured young master to steal it. Firstly, he was afraid that if he told young master the truth, young master would refuse to consume this item. Then, it would affect your chances of obtaining the South Sea spring water. Secondly, he probably wanted to secretly plant drug addiction in young master's body. If young master consumes this item and doesn't have a way to cure the drug addiction, I'm afraid that you will be controlled by Ji Shirling because of the drug addiction. I suppose young master doesn't like being controlled by others, right? Ning Fan's eyes immediately turned grim. This item is comparable to poppy in the mortal world, isn't it? If that's the case, even if this item has the effect of freezing the seal of the punishment ring, Ning Fan would never consume it. It's too risky. His heart was filled with anger. In order to obtain the South Sea spring water, the 100 Flowers Emperor actually used this item to trick him. Moreover, it's highly possible that there's a deeper scheme behind the drug addiction. The 100 Flowers Emperor has gone too far. I wonder if young master is willing to take the risk and help me after I tell him about this? Don't you want to take revenge on Ji Shirling? The blood wasp lady looked at Ning Fan deeply and said with a smile, there was only one way to take revenge. Release the prisoner of the 100 Flowers Emperor, and let the 100 Flowers Emperor's plan of many years go to waste. This reason isn't enough for me to help you. Ning Fan suddenly took a deep breath. His mind regained its calmness in the blink of an eye. There was no longer any trace of anger on his face. If it's for the sake of the ancient chaos great emperor, he could endure this little scheme for the time being. Even if he really wants to take revenge, he would not do it now but after everything is done. The blood wasp lady looked at Ning Fan with slight surprise. She seemed to have underestimated Ning Fan's patience. After hesitating for a while, she said, how about this? As long as young master is willing to help me, not only will I reward you handsomely, but I can also share some benefits with you right now. Benefits? What kind of benefits? Young master, why don't you take a closer look at this frozen blood sea? What exactly is it? The blood wasp lady pointed at the frozen blood sea through the blood veil that shrouded this place. Ning Fan followed the direction that the blood wasp lady pointed at, and carefully examined the blood sea. His expression changed from seriousness to solemnity, and then to slight shock. The water of this blood sea is actually the blood of an immortal emperor. However, isn't this resentment a little too heavy? Young master has good eyesight. The water of this blood sea is the blood of an immortal emperor. In the past, enlightened Gu Hua failed to break through the eternal 7 tribulations, and perished under the cataclysm. His blood spilled and formed a river within 1,000 li. The resentment was so strong that it couldn't be dispelled. It actually turned the 100 Flowers Buddhist land into a place of great danger. The spirit veins were all destroyed and 9 out of 10 disciples were scattered because of it. It was only until the second master of the 100 Flowers sect came, and spent 100 years to dispel the resentment of the immortal emperor. He rebuilt the spirit veins and collected all the blood that enlightened Gu Hua had spilled that day. Unfortunately, even though this blood was the blood of an immortal emperor, it lost all of its golden light due to its heavy resentment. It couldn't be of much use anymore. Thus, it was sealed in the treasure vault by the second master of the 100 Flowers sect. It was only until Ji Shirling became the 4th master of the 100 Flowers sect that he took out this blood, and studied it repeatedly. I have no idea what he was studying. After that, I offended Ji Shirling and he used this blood to suppress me. The resentment contained in this blood sea is extremely terrifying. Every few months, it will form a blood sense tide. That blood sense tide won't harm people's lives, but it will disturb the minds of cultivators. When I was suppressed in the beginning, I would lose my rationality every time a blood sense tide appears. I would fall into a state of madness, and would only be able to regain my consciousness after a few months. After that, it would be the next blood sense tide, and I would fall into a state of madness continuously. Perhaps I gradually got used to it. As time went by, the time that I would fall into a state of madness when facing the blood sense tide became shorter and shorter. Even though I would still suffer unspeakable pain when the tide comes, I gradually gained some benefits from it. The resentment in the blood sea contains some of enlightened Gu Hua's memories before she died. Among them are the scenes when she failed to transcend her tribulation. There are also some divine abilities and secret techniques that she used before she died that she did not teach to outsiders. In a few more hours, it will be the time when the next blood sense tide arrives. If I pay some price, I'm confident that I can engrave the scene of enlightened Gu Hua's tribulation and give it to young master. This is something that only I who knows the most about this blood sea can do. No one else can do it. Ning Fan's expression changed. Ning Fan might not even put Daoist Bai Hua's abilities and secret techniques in his eyes, but the memories of Daoist Bai Hua's failure in transcending the tribulation were even more precious than the abilities of an immortal emperor. Cultivators in the primordial realm were classified by the number of tribulations they had gone through. Naturally, the tribulations weren't ordinary heavenly tribulations, but rather, aeon tribulations. They were far more powerful than heavenly tribulations like the skeletal age tribulation. To the ancient cultivators, cultivating their magic power to the limit was not the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing was to attract the cataclysm. If he couldn't attract the cataclysm, he would be stuck at a bottleneck, unable to improve further. As for immortal Thear-cranked experts, drawing down the cataclysm was no longer the most difficult thing. Successfully passing the cataclysm was the most difficult thing. The cataclysm of the immortal Reverent and immortal King realm was not too dangerous. Even the sixth cataclysm of the martial monarch realm. As long as one was well prepared and talented enough, the chances of surviving it were not small. However, once one became an emperor, the power of the cataclysm would increase by several folds. From the seventh cataclysm onwards, only 2 out of 10 immortal emperors would be able to overcome the cataclysm. Throughout the ages, countless immortal emperors had died from the cataclysm. The biggest difference between the immortal emperor cataclysm and the immortal king cataclysm was that there was only one chance to attack the cataclysm. There had never been an immortal emperor who could survive a failed tribulation. As a result, most of the immortal sovereigns were stuck at the sixth tribulation. Some of them were not lucky enough, and were unable to attract the next tribulation to break through to the next realm. There were also many old monsters whose bottlenecks had already loosened, and could attract the seventh tribulation at any time. However, because they were not confident of passing the tribulation, they held back the tribulation and stayed at the sixth tribulation, accumulating their strength. To those immortal emperors who desired to undergo tribulation, any experience related to tribulation was priceless. If he could observe the memories of other immortal emperors going through the cataclysm, it would undoubtedly increase his understanding of the cataclysm, thus increasing his chances of success. It was a matter of life and death, so he had to be cautious. Unfortunately, it was not that easy to observe the memories of immortal emperors going through the tribulation. Those immortal emperors who succeeded in passing their tribulations were basically lucky enough to pass the tribulation, after going through a narrow escape from death. During the tribulation, they would usually use all their abilities and techniques. The memories of the tribulation involved too many secrets. Naturally, they would not be willing to share it with others. It was the top secret of each immortal emperor force. It was said that the Eastern Heaven Godly Void Pavilion had auctioned a memory crystal. The memory of an immortal emperor who succeeded in passing the tribulation was sealed inside the crystal with a great ability. It was said that in the end, it was bought by an immortal emperor with a damaged innate magic treasure. It was considered to be quite valuable. The blood wasp lady in front of him had provided him with a chance to observe the memories of an immortal emperor going through the tribulation. Even though it was just the memory of a failed tribulation, it was still very helpful for him to understand the details of the cataclysm. However, such a small benefit was obviously not enough to move him. After all, he was still very far away from becoming an immortal emperor. The seventh tribulation was even further away. Thus, he was not in a hurry to understand these things. If it's just the memory of a failed tribulation, it's not enough. Ningfan shook his head and said, "Humph. If it's other sixth tribulation immortal emperors, I'm afraid they would be very willing to help me for the sake of these memories of a failed tribulation. After all, it's just delivering something to me. It's not a difficult task. However, young master is still not satisfied. Your appetite is really big." If it wasn't for the fact that young master is the only one who is slightly trustworthy among all the people who have entered the treasure vault, I could have gone to look for other people to help me instead of wasting my time here with young master. The blood wasp lady was a little displeased. When she saw Ningfan's indifference, she could not help but grit her teeth. I really don't have anything else to repay young master now. If I can get out of this dangerous situation, I will certainly repay you in the future. The value of it is definitely more precious than these memories of a failed tribulation. I can swear on my demon soul great oath. Ningfan shook his head slightly. There's no need for the demon soul great oath. I have 3 questions. As long as you can answer 1 or 2 of them, it's not like I can't help you. After hearing his words, the blood wasp lady's expression instantly eased. She said with a smile, "Young master, you can ask me whatever questions you have. I'm very willing to answer them. Firstly, what's the real reason why the 100-flower sovereign suppressed you?" About that, the blood wasp lady was at a loss for words. She knew that Ningfan had seen through her lies. Her face darkened slightly, but she did not explain further. Secondly, other than your main demon soul and your second demon soul, you seem to have cultivated other secondary demon souls, right? That's right. The blood wasp lady pretended to be calm, but she was secretly shocked. She did cultivate the third demon soul, and it was hidden somewhere else. However, no one knew about it. Even Ji Shirling did not know about it. How did this man who she had just met for the first time know about it? Thirdly, do you think the 100-flower sovereign knows about your escape plan? The blood wasp lady's expression became even more dejected and desperate. Even this man whom she had just met for the first time could see through her concealment of the third demon soul. Did Ji Shirling also see through it? Or, did Ji Shirling already know the whereabouts of her third demon soul? Then, is there a need to continue with this escape plan? Will I fall into the next trap after escaping from one trap? As expected, this lady still has other secondary demon souls. I'm afraid the person whom she wants me to look for is the other secondary demon souls that she has hidden in the outside world. Ningfan was just making a random guess. When he saw the change in the blood wasp lady's expression, he knew that he had guessed correctly. Young master, are you going to help me or not? The blood wasp lady smiled bitterly. No. What a joke. Why would Ningfan help a lady who was hiding something from him? What if he was tricked by her? All right. About the escape plan, I indeed need to reconsider it. It's fine if young master doesn't want to help me. However, seeing that I have given you some advice, can you keep it a secret for me? Don't tell Ji Shirling about my intention to escape. The blood wasp lady was not disappointed by Ningfan's rejection. Instead, she regained her composure. Don't worry. I'm not a gossipy person. Even though I won't help you escape, I won't harm you either. Besides, even though I won't help you escape, I'm more than willing to help you in other aspects. Consider it as me repaying you for warning me about the cold dew. Thus, under the astonished gaze of the blood wasp lady, Ningfan easily broke through her isolation honeycomb. Then, he waved his sleeves and struck out rays of golden light, constantly changing the general situation of this place. Gradually, the general situation of the Sea of Blood eased. The suppressive force was reduced. The blood wasp lady covered her mouth in disbelief. Her main demon soul that was suppressed at the bottom of the Sea of Blood should have been suffering the pain of her soul being torn apart at all times. However, as Ningfan casually changed the general situation of this place, The pain actually subsided. Even though her main demon soul was still being suppressed, she no longer felt much pain when it was being suppressed. After enduring the pain for millions of years, the sudden disappearance of the pain was obviously not something that ordinary people could understand. It made the blood wasp lady let out a comfortable moan. Her entire body felt comfortable. For the first time, the way she looked at Ning Fan was filled with a hint of complicated emotions. There was also a deep sense of respect. This external cultivator's attainments in the Tao of formations are really impressive to be able to change the restrictions that Ji Shirling had set up so casually. Even though Ning Fan had rejected the blood wasp lady's request, he did not plan to leave in advance. Instead, he decided to stay here and wait for the blood sense tide that the blood wasp lady mentioned. It was certainly impossible for this blood wasp lady to pay the price to help him imprint the memory of enlightened being Gu Hua's tribulation transcendence. Even though this lady did not want to help him, it did not mean that he could not try it himself. If he could imprint part of the memory of the tribulation transcendence from the tide with his own strength, it would also be a wonderful thing. 8 hours later, the blood sense tide appeared. The surface of the sea of blood that was originally frozen suddenly rose with a green lightning. As soon as the lightning appeared, the blood wasp lady's expression changed. She hurriedly bade farewell, and turned into a ray of bloodlight to hide at the bottom of the sea. She actually did not dare to return to the surface of the sea. Then, the entire surface of the sea of blood was engulfed by the green lightning. Gradually the green lightning weakened. However, what came next was a resentment sense that was enough to cover the entire sky. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It was an angry roar that echoed from the ancient times to the present day. It came from the resentment sense. It was the angry roar of enlightened being Gu Hua before his death. Ning Fan did not dare to be careless. He had already activated the protective golden light of the God Extermination Shield, isolating the resentment chi of the enlightened being several zhang away from him. At the same time, at the bottom of the sea of blood, the blood wasp lady was talking to another lady who looked exactly like her. It was the main demon soul of the blood wasp lady. I'm sorry. I didn't manage to convince him to help. Humph. He's lucky. Otherwise, to the third demon soul, this boundless butterfly will be a great supplement. This person is too cautious. Fortunately, even if he doesn't come to us, the third demon soul will probably do it on its own. To us spirit-devouring bees, it's impossible for us to recognize the smell of the boundless butterfly and ignore it. However, there's one thing that this boundless butterfly said. It's impossible for Ji Shirling to know nothing about our plan. I'm afraid that she also wants to use this matter to confirm some of her guesses. If she didn't have doubts, why would she imprison us here for so many years? This boundless butterfly seems to want to use its own power to imprint the memory of enlightened being Gu Hua's tribulation. It's difficult. It's too difficult. Even if we work together, we still need to pay a huge price to achieve this. This person's cultivation base is sealed. I'm afraid that once he touches the memory of the resentment sense, he will lose his mind. Let's just take it as a punishment for his unwillingness to help us. Let's just watch him get gravely injured by this resentment sense. At the same time, the 100 Flowers Grand Emperor who was in the inner palace let out a cold humph. If she did not sense wrongly, the suppressed spirit-devouring bee actually activated its honeycomb ability and came into contact with Ning Fan. The spirit-devouring bee seems to know the drawbacks of the releasing cold dew. If that's the case, Ning Fan will most likely not eat the releasing cold dew. Humph. If this person doesn't seal his cultivation base, it's no different from a fool's dream to enter the top 3 of the second round. It seems like I need to think of another way to obtain the South Sea spring water. I don't need to rely on this person's strength anymore. Chapter 1023. As the tide of blood sense approached, the resentment chi in the air became even more oppressive. Ghostly cries of unknown origin resounded in the surroundings. Ning Fan expanded his protective golden light to 1 zhang and walked calmly on the surface of the frozen sea. The resentment chi did not affect him at all. He could clearly see the general situation of this place. He could even guess the location of the center of the tide. After determining the location of the center of the tide, Ning Fan went to the east of the sea and sat in a meditative position, waiting for the arrival of the tide. 6 hours passed just like that. The sea of blood suddenly showed signs of melting. The waves under the layer of ice started to flow again. The resentment chi spread like a thick fog, covering the entire surface of the sea in a hazy manner. In the midst of the haze, some broken images would appear in the mist from time to time like a mirage. All of them were the scenes of enlightened being Gu Hua before his death. It's here. The power of the tide of blood sense will double every 2 hours. Even with our combined strength, we can only last for 8 hours in the tide. At that time, the memories related to the tribulation will appear. This vast expanse butterfly wants to imprint the memories of the tribulation by sealing its cultivation base. It's as difficult as ascending to the heavens. At the bottom of the deep sea, the main demon soul of the blood wasp struggled to resist the rising resentment chi in the surroundings while smiling coldly. She was really looking forward to seeing Ning Fan suffer a setback under the tide. Moreover, in the eyes of the main demon soul of the blood wasp, Ning Fan might not even be able to last for 2 hours in the tide, and would definitely be severely injured. Unfortunately, she was destined to be disappointed. With the protection of the God Exterminating Shield, Ning Fan treated the resentment chi as if it was child's play. He was not injured at all, and the resentment chi did not even get close to his body. As a blood-red wave rushed over from the boundless sea surface, deafening sounds of waves crashing against each other could be heard. The wave was getting closer and closer to Ning Fan. Surprisingly, it was a 100 jong tall giant wave. It roared and slammed down on the place where Ning Fan was sitting. The resentment chi that this 100 jong tall giant wave was extremely terrifying. If one were to compare it to mortals, one would need to slaughter tens of thousands of mortals on cultivation planets in order to accumulate such a huge amount of resentment chi. It was already enough to make some newly advanced immortal venerables change their expressions. However, Ning Fan was calm in dealing with it. He casually waved his hand and shot out hundreds of golden rays at the gigantic wave in an instant. The rays dispersed the momentum of the gigantic wave. Then the gigantic wave was stopped in midair, as if it had stopped moving. It was extremely strange. This kid actually managed to negate the momentum of the giant wave's advance and fall, causing the giant wave to stop in midair. What kind of profound understanding of the world's momentum is needed to be able to do this? At the bottom of the deep sea, the main and second demon souls of the blood wasp were both shocked. Even the 100 Flowers Emperor in the inner hall raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he was surprised. Ning Fan looked thoughtfully at the still waves. The memories of Taoist Master Gu Hua's tribulation have been preserved to this day, because of the deep resentment. It is covered in resentment, unchanging over the years. These memories are too fragmented. They are like a complete book that has been torn into countless pages. Moreover, each page has been broken into countless pieces. It's too troublesome to record these fragmented memories. Even if I do record them, I can only see scenes that cannot be connected together. It's better to directly collect the resentment chi in this place and slowly study the various memories in the resentment chi in the future. Perhaps I can see the complete version from them. These resentment chi can also be considered as one of the treasures in the treasury. After all, the 100 Flowers Emperor has already said that if I take them away, she certainly won't have anything to say. Having made up his mind, Ning Fan actually waved his sleeve and directly kept the still giant wave into his sleeve. This kid actually took away the giant wave that was formed by the resentment chi. The two ladies at the bottom of the deep sea were extremely astonished. With their understanding of the world's momentum, they were far from being able to make the giant wave stop in midair and allow it to be collected freely. When facing the onslaught of the giant wave, the only thing they could do was to avoid it. However, Ning Fan was able to do it. His techniques had already gone beyond their imagination. Obviously, he was not someone that ordinary immortal venerables from the ancient times could compare to. A mere external cultivator actually had such powerful techniques. The secret character of force of the eastern heavens. No, I'm afraid this kid has also mastered the prestige character art. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to be so calm when facing my aura force that day. I have underestimated this kid. Perhaps this kid doesn't even need to consume the releasing cold, due to obtain the spring water of the southern sea. There's no need for me to completely give up on this hope. Ever since Ning Fan entered the treasury, the 100 Flowers Emperor finally revealed a satisfied smile for the first time. The gloominess on her face had been swept away. Then, as if she thought of something, her eyes flashed with the light of calculation. Even after imprisoning the blood wasps for so many years, they still could not verify anything. Perhaps, if the memories of the ancient flower fall into Ning Fan's hands, he might be able to uncover some secrets. Ning Fan used the secret character of force to neutralize the force of the incoming tidal waves, and kept them away one after another. This state of calmness lasted for 6 hours. Finally, it began to feel a little strenuous. At this moment, the density of the resentment chi in the tidal waves had already increased by a few times. Moreover, it was still showing signs of increasing as time passed. From the 18th hour onwards, Ning Fan had no choice but to activate his golden protective light to its limit. When the 18th hour arrived, Ning Fan's protective golden light had already been pressured by the surrounding resentment chi to the point that it had sunk a little. If he withdraws the protective golden light at this moment, Ning Fan firmly believed that he would be directly turned into a pool of blood by the resentment chi. Fortunately, the tidal waves were coming to an end. Otherwise, Ning Fan did not have the confidence to hold on for a few more hours with his sealed cultivation base. However, this was already enough to make the two ladies of the deep sea feel astonished. As the last wave of the tidal waves passed, Ning Fan withdrew the protective golden light and left calmly. There was now a palm-sized blood-red crystal in his sleeve. If one were to listen to it from a close distance, they would be able to hear the cries of ghosts and the sound of waves crashing against the shore from the crystal. It was the condensation of the resentment chi that he had collected from the blood-sense tidal waves. After chanting an incantation, a formation light instantly appeared in the air. It wrapped Ning Fan up and teleported him out of the treasure vault. The crowd outside the treasure vault had already become impatient from the wait. Just as they were discussing among themselves, Ning Fan's sudden appearance made everyone fall into silence. Each of them had their own thoughts. This person is finally willing to come out. Since he could stay in the treasure vault for such a long time, his abilities must be strong. We can't underestimate him. If we meet him in the second round, we mustn't provoke him too much. There were many people who were wary of Ning Fan. This person has actually stayed in the treasure vault for such a long time. I wonder what kind of benefits he has obtained. Of course, there were also greedy cultivators. However, because they were wary of Ning Fan's strength, they restrained their thoughts. After Ning Fan came out, the young men with flesh wings who led the way were finally willing to bring everyone back to the guest rooms. Those cultivators who had obtained benefits in the treasure vault began to get busy as soon as they returned to the guest rooms. Ning Fan was no exception. He had indeed obtained quite a lot of good items in the treasure vault this time. For example, that drop of venom which could kill an immortal venerated poison immortal of the 3 desolate lands. Ning Fan did not plan to use it to kill people. Instead, he planned to consume it in the future when he was strong enough to increase his poison resistance. Another example was the 6th grade Dao spring that filled a river, the huge number of great infernal pill formulas, and the entire orchard that was filled with 1 million years old spiritual fruits. All of these benefits could be considered as a great harvest. There was also that drop of releasing cold dew. Even though Ning Fan did not plan to consume it, he still took it with him. In the end, he did not put it back. Of course, there were also the memories of enlightened being Gu Hua's failure in transcending the tribulation. What Ning Fan brought out was not an engraved copy. Instead, it was the complete resentment chi of the Emperor's death. It had nearly absorbed all the resentment chi in the entire blood sea. Holding the blood-red resentment crystal in his hand, Ning Fan tried to probe it with his spirit sense bit by bit. Immediately, he felt a piercing pain from the resentment chi in his spirit sense. At the same time, what was reflected in his mind were the fragmented memories of enlightened being Gu Hua's failure in transcending the tribulation. They were still too fragmented. He could not see the entire process of enlightened being Gu Hua's 7th tribulation. He could only see some fragmented images. In the first image, enlightened being Gu Hua was standing above a green lightning sea. He was resisting the lightning attacks of the lightning sea with the power of an innate treasure sword. The second image, however, suddenly changed. It was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua turned into ashes. Before he died, he was still shouting words like, "I don't believe it." In the third image, it was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua carefully prepared to transcend the tribulation. In the fourth image, it was the moment when enlightened being Gu Hua fought against the green lightning sea. In the fifth image, it was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua was admiring the carefree orchid on the main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak. In the sixth image, it was, all of a sudden, Ning Fan paused. He rewound his spirit sense a little, and looked at the fragmented memories again. The sun was setting in the west, and the night breeze was slightly cold. Enlightened being Gu Hua seemed to have a premonition that this tribulation would not be smooth. Thus, he dismissed all the children and stayed on the cliff alone. He looked at the carefree orchids with a solemn expression. "I don't have more than 30% confidence in successfully transcending the seventh tribulation. Logically speaking, I should continue to suppress the tribulation and continue to accumulate my strength, waiting for the moment when I'm more confident. Unfortunately, I can't wait any longer. I want to take a gamble with this tribulation to verify a guess. Perhaps the answer will make me collapse and make me go crazy. However, I will never believe that this guess is true. Even if it's true, I will use this tribulation as a bait to plot against the mastermind and seize it. It's a pity that I found a 12th grade Flower King as a protective artifact. Now, I can only retrieve the 11th grade Flower King. I'm afraid the chance of seizing it is lower than I expected. The flower that I planted in the illusory world first lost its life gold chi, and then withered. If it wasn't for that, I would have at least a 50% chance of successfully fusing with the 12th grade Flower King. However, if the flower didn't wither, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend it. Therefore, it's hard to say if I succeeded. That was the 1st grade Flower King that I had placed the deepest hope in my heart. Because of a butterfly, it gained sentience and feelings. However, it died looking at its husband and perished along with the ancient heavenly court. What a pity! Enlightened being Gu Hua displayed his divine ability, and 12 light balls flew out from his body. Each of the light balls was a flower that emitted the chi of a monarch. Gradually, 12 thumb-sized women emerged from the 12 light balls. They were sleeping in their respective flower cores. They were the souls of the flowers, and all of them were extremely beautiful women. Among them, the soul of a woman who was sleeping on the largest and most illusory flower had an appearance that Ning Fan was very familiar with. Su Qiuling, you're the only one that's missing. Enlightened being Gu Hua looked at the carefree orchids that were as pale as sickly beauties and sighed softly. The illusory 12th grade flower which carried the image of Su Qiuling instantly faded and disappeared. Only the other 11 grade flowers remained. The scene ended there. Ning Fan's breath stopped for a moment. He watched the scene over and over again. In his soul, there seemed to be a trembling voice that kept colliding with each other. The Flower King had lost its life gold chi, and perished along with the ancient heavenly court. The butterfly and the soul of the flower which was exactly the same as Su Qiuling. That appearance was enough to make his soul tremble. That flower. Could it be Linger's past life? And the butterfly that was related to the ancient heavenly court in the story was referring to him. Did I have any interaction with Ling, in my past life? Ling, actually died while looking at her husband in her past life? Was she looking at him while looking at her husband? Ning Fan's expression turned gloomy. He could not tell what he was feeling. In his past life, they had gone through life and death situations together. In this life, they had also held hands together. However, when they first met on the road, they did not know each other. Samsara is like a stranger. Samsara is like a stranger. All of a sudden, Ning Fan understood something. No wonder he was so concerned about the carefree orchid on the 100 Flowers Peak. He always had the feeling that he could not move his eyes away from it. Perhaps, the Flower King in Ling's past life was this carefree orchid. Only the flower that Ling transformed into was worthy for him to take a second look. Carefree orchid, Wangfu Orchid Ningfan's eyes darkened. He continued to examine the resentment crystal. There were hundreds and thousands of broken scenes inside. However, he skipped all of them that were related to the tribulation. It was difficult to find any scenes related to Su Qiuling. Perhaps at the last moment of enlightened being Gu Hua, Su Qiuling, who represented the carefree orchid flower king, only thought about it once. It was not very important. Thus, it did not appear too much in his memory. However, at this moment, Ningfan would rather not have those memories related to the tribulation. He would rather have this memory crystal only contain bits and pieces of information related to Su Qiuling. He wanted to know more about her past life. Unfortunately, there was nothing more. After a long time, Ningfan kept the memory crystal. No one could tell whether he was happy or angry. No one knew what he was thinking about. In the following days, Ningfan would still appear at the cliff. However, it was no longer to comprehend the ancient devil's abilities. Instead, he was looking at the clusters of pale carefree orchids. It was as if he was looking at the smiling face of her husband, who was looking forward to his return across time and space. He could not help but take out the zither that he had not played for a long time, and play the Yuren song that Su Qiuling taught him. The melody was not as beautiful as those zither grandmasters. However, there was a kind of emotion that seeped into one's bones. Bit by bit, it was deeply hidden in the zither music. There was also an extremely ethereal Dao aura that appeared on Ningfan's body. Bit by bit, it increased along with the sound of the zither. That was the qi of samsara. Samsara is like a stranger. Ningfan saw the past in this 100 Flowers Peak. He saw his past life from the moment he met Su Qiuling. If the first encounter in his past life was the starting point, and the second encounter in this life was the ending point, then this moment was the moment when Ningfan walked from the starting point to the ending point, and returned to the starting point. Even though it was not a perfect cultivation of the Tao, and it was just a return of the emotional experience, it gave Ningfan a lot of inspiration. Moreover, that kind of inspiration gave him a real and personal understanding of the word samsara for the first time. Samsara is like a stranger. Ningfan had already grasped a trace of samsara power when he took the first step of cultivation. However, that trace of samsara power was too little, and it was not comprehended by him. Instead, it was comprehended by immortal sovereign Zido, who imitated it. Therefore, it could still be used when he took the first step of cultivation. However, it was somewhat useless when he reached the second step of cultivation. However, it was different at this moment. Ningfan could not tell what he was feeling. However, under the sound of the zither, there was the qi of samsara. It was getting thicker and deeper, making it unfathomable. He did not deliberately amplify the sound of the zither. However, the ethereal sound of the zither seemed to be able to penetrate all the barriers of time and space, and enter the ears of every cultivator in the 100 Flowers Peak. Day after day, the sound of the zither continued. Day after day, the sound of the zither became deeper and deeper, giving people an unfathomable feeling. It was as if there was a seed of samsara that had truly sprouted in Ningfan's Tao heart. Few people knew about it, but it did not mean that no one knew about it. In the past few days, everyone, including enlightened being Bai Lu, was astounded by the strangeness of Ningfan's zither sound ability. However, they did not know where the true wonders of the zither sound lay. However, it could not hide it from the two supreme experts in this place. Zhang Yu could naturally see the germination of samsara in Ningfan's zither sound. Even though it was just a germination, it was something that countless immortal emperors and quasi-saints could only dream of. However, Ningfan did it. As for the other person who was shocked, it was naturally the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. As an immortal emperor, it was impossible for her to be completely ignorant about the power of samsara. The penetrating power contained in Ningfan's zither sound was obviously samsara. It was the true samsara that belonged to Ningfan alone. It was neither an imitation nor borrowing. Perhaps the samsara power in Ningfan's body was still not strong at the moment. However, as long as he continues to cultivate, this samsara power would eventually become a power that no second-step cultivator would be able to resist. It was a power that belonged to the third step. Someone write down the zither sound that you heard. The 100 Flowers Great Emperor calmly summoned a group of maids, and asked them to record the zither sound. However, when these maids were about to write down the zither sound, they realized that the zither sound in their minds was unfamiliar. They kept forgetting it, and could not remember anything at all. The 100 Flowers' great emperor could not help but feel a little solemn. She also could not remember any of the notes. It was a strange zither sound that entered her ears and was immediately forgotten in this way. She was even more certain that Ningfan had integrated an extremely profound samsara power into his zither sound. While she was feeling astonished, she also had unprecedented confidence in Ningfan's participation in the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition. Reporting to his honor, the Witch of the Sea Witch tribe has replied that she is willing to fight for his honor in the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition. However, his honor's reward will be doubled. All of a sudden, a maid entered the inner hall and reported. The 100 Flowers' great emperor's eyes turned slightly gloomy. Then she calmed down and said to the messenger with a strange smile, "Tell this woman that I can double the reward. However, if she can't get the South Sea spring water, don't blame me for being merciless." Yes. That maid excused herself and left. The 100 Flowers' great emperor, on the other hand, shook her head disapprovingly. In the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition, Ningfan should be more than enough. As for the Witch of the Sea Witch tribe, I'll just use her as an insurance. The 100 Flowers' great emperor gently raised her hand and pointed with her finger. A sword light that transmitted sound was suddenly shot out and disappeared in a flash. At the same time, on the cliff of the main peak of the 100 Flowers' great emperor, a sword light that transmitted sound suddenly appeared beside Ningfan. If I can get the South Sea spring water and nurture enough divine essence pills, I will certainly give you the information you want. I will never go back on my words. As for some of my previous schemes, I hope little friend can forgive me. After everything is done, I will certainly compensate you. She actually had the intention to ease the tension between the two of them. Ningfan stopped playing the zither. His expression was a little hesitant. Then he sighed softly. There were many disagreements between him and the 100 Flowers' great emperor. However, it was not an irreconcilable enmity. Since the other party was willing to take a step back, he did not plan to pursue the matter any further. After all, the matter regarding the ancient Chaos Great Emperor was more important. After remaining silent for a while, Ningfan turned his hand and sent a flying sword back. If I can get the information about the sacrificial vessel, all our grudges will be resolved. As long as he could get the information about the sacrificial vessel and save the ancient Chaos Great Emperor, Ningfan could ignore some schemes. After getting a reply, the 100 Flowers' great emperor immediately felt a little relieved. Although she had a domineering personality, she was also unwilling to provoke a powerful enemy who had just comprehended the samsara realm for no reason. It's still all right for him now. As for his achievements in the future, she did not dare to imagine it in detail. Perhaps he would at least be a quasi-saint realm expert. It's unwise to provoke this person. A few more days passed. Rows of spiritual beast carriages began to move towards Lioli City in the Middle State. Ningfan naturally planned to move as well. Unfortunately, Zhang Yu and O Yangwan could not go with him. Up until now, with the help of O Yangwan's 5-colored medicine soul, the Golden Core Realm Pill Refinement Master of the 100 Flowers Peak had already concocted more than 60 Divine Essence pills. However, this number was still far from the requirement of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Perhaps, O Yangwan would still have to stay in this place for a period of time. Zhang Yu naturally stayed behind to protect O Yangwan. The people she brought along naturally needed to be protected properly. As for Old Wu, he shamelessly insisted on going to the Middle State with Ningfan. He wanted to represent the Towerwood tribe and the grassland of the southern border to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle in the Middle State. Master, bring Little 8 along with you. Little 8 has obtained a new magic treasure, and his abilities have improved tremendously. If he participates in the grand competition in the Middle State, he will certainly be able to sweep away all the enemies in front of you for Master. Old Wu was full of confidence. Even if his cultivation base was sealed, He was confident that he would be able to face an ancient immortal venerate head-on, just by relying on his improved dark luck ability. If his cultivation base is unsealed, he also has the confidence to fight against an ancient immortal king who has undergone 3 tribulations. With the Emperor Jade Luck Crown, his strength had improved tremendously. He was no longer the old Wu that he used to be. According to the rules that I understand, you didn't participate in the first round of the mausoleum seizing battle. It seems like you are not qualified to represent the Tower Wood in the second round. I think it's better for you to stay here. There's no need for you to go with me. Ning Fan gave old Wu a meaningful look. What? I am not qualified to participate in the second round. Even if I can't participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle, Little 8 also wants to follow Master to this Lioli city. Little 8's long-cherished wish is to follow Master. What I want is not to be rewarded by Master, but to be able to see Master's handsome face every day when I open my eyes. Every day when I take a deep breath, I can smell Master's fragrance. Every day. Ning Fan knitted his brows and felt a chill run down his spine. He began to suspect that this old Wu had a sexual interest in men. Subconsciously, he moved a few feet away from old Wu. Of course, he also suspected that old Wu had other motives for wanting to go to Lioli City so urgently. Recently, this fellow had been searching the treasure-searching tortoise countless times to the west of the Middle State. Lioli City is just to the west of the Middle State. Could it be that there is something here that old Wu desperately wants to obtain? Ning Fan had to admit that he knew old Wu too well. According to the feedback from the treasure-searching tortoise, there was really something in the direction of Lioli City in the Middle State that made old Wu salivate. That was why he was eager to follow Ning Fan to Lioli City. As for helping Ning Fan to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle, it doesn't matter whether he can participate or not. Old Wu, was not a good person. Why should he help the Tower Wood tribe to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle? If he had the time, he would rather go and deceive the natives of the Middle State. There were a lot of fools in the De Bei clan. He could obtain a lot of benefits just by deceiving and scaring them. However, compared to that item, ordinary benefits seem to be overshadowed. Forget it. I will bring you along for this trip. Ning Fan smiled meaningfully. Old Wu suddenly shuddered. Did this fiend see through something? Last time when he drowned the realm bottle with water, he also smiled like this. This time, let's go. A carriage of spiritual beasts carried Ning Fan, Duo Lan and old Wu towards the extreme west of the Middle State. This time, old Wu was the one driving the carriage while Ning Fan and Duo Lan stayed in the carriage. Ning Fan did not waste any time during the journey. Along the way, he was sorting out the insights he had gained from the ancient devil and the previous round of samsara. What is samsara? Ning Fan still had no idea. He just vaguely felt that after the incident with Su Qiuling, a seed seemed to have been planted in his heart. When he uses the samsara power, the feeling he got was somewhat different from before. The purplish golden wind mist power twined around his fingertips like an obedient snake. This was once immortal sovereign Zido's samsara comprehension. Today, however, it seemed to be different. It was as if he had a unique comprehension that belonged to him. Compared to when I was in the 100 Flowers Peak, I seemed to be very different. However, every time he wanted to meditate and comprehend the Tao rhythm of samsara, he would be interrupted by old Wu's impromptu singing along the way. His singing was so horrible that one could not bear to look at it. It was an incomparably cheerful singing. Even with Ning Fan's firm Tao heart, he still frowned when he heard the singing. The singing of senior subordinate is really special. Duo Lan tried her best to describe it in a euphemistic manner, and smiled helplessly. It's indeed special. It's really a waste that this fellow doesn't cultivate devil sound type divine abilities. His singing actually carries the innate power of ridicule. Ning Fan also shook his head helplessly. However, he did not stop old Wu from singing. It's fine if it's unpleasant to listen to. I'll just treat it as training my state of mind. Unexpectedly, old Wu heard everything that was said in the carriage, and secretly memorized Ning Fan's words. When my master was still alive, he also said that I have an innate devil sound talent. He said that I'm tone deaf, which is 1 in 100,000 people. In the past, I just thought that my master was mocking me. Now, even the fiends said the same thing. Could it be that I really have this kind of talent? I might as well develop a devil roar technique that incorporates my dark luck divine ability. Hence, when old Wu was singing, he would pause from time to time as if he was pondering and studying the changes in the rhythm of the music. Under such an atmosphere, Liuli City was getting closer and closer. Finally, it appeared in front of them. Are you the participants or spectators of the second round? As soon as the spiritual beast carriage stopped, a group of cultivators came to the front to interrogate them. The person leading the group was a strong man with red hair and red eyes. There's no need to interrogate me. It's me. Duo Lan walked out of the carriage with a cold and aloof attitude. Immediately, the red-haired strong man's expression changed, and he immediately kneeled on the ground. Chu Lai Sinner Luosher greets young lord. I didn't expect that young lord would also come to Liuli City to watch the second round of the mausoleum seizing. Luosher originally thought that with young lord's identity, he would directly participate in the third round. But this is also good. In Liuli City, there is a matter that requires young lord's decision. Please help us and Chu Lai. Chapter 1024. Did something happen to the disciples who stayed in Liuli City? After listening to the words of the red-haired burly man, Duo Lan frowned. She seemed to have guessed something. Subconsciously, she wanted to ask more about it. However, after thinking for a while, she realized that she was following Ning Fan to participate in the competition this time. If she causes trouble for Ning Fan again, it would not be nice. Thus, she hesitated for a moment, and swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. If you have anything to say, it won't be too late to tell me after I settle down in Liuli City. It's my negligence. Guards, bring this saintess to the city to settle down. The red-haired burly man was stunned. He glanced at the carriage thoughtfully, and seemed to have met Ning Fan's eyes for a moment. Then he stood up and ordered. No need. We can just enter the city by ourselves. Duo Lan rejected him indifferently. The carriage stopped at the stables outside Liuli City. Duo Lan brought Ning Fan, and old Wu into the city on foot. Carriages were not allowed in the city. Be it immortal emperors or commoners, all of them had the same treatment. This was because Liuli City had another significance. It was the Buddha capital of the Middle State. It was the holy land in the hearts of countless Buddhist cultivators. Of course, it was not allowed to be desecrated. Liuli City was the largest city in the Middle State. There were no less than 1,000 temples in the city. There were a total of 6 city gates. It would take a few days to walk from one of the city gates to the other with ordinary walking speed. Therefore, there were many relay stations in the city. There were also teleportation formations in the city that allowed people to teleport freely within the city. Liuli was one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. It was green in color and glowed brightly. Putting aside the ordinary buildings in Liuli City, every single brick and tile of the temples were made of supreme-grade Liuli. The green light of the temple pierced through the clouds, as if the Dharma of Buddhism was covering the sky, giving people an incomparably sacred feeling. There were also many public squares in the city. Famous monks in the city would often give lectures there. Ning Fan had only walked 2 stone streets when he encountered a few eminent monks who were giving lectures. Many of them were listening. There were no mortals in the despicable tribe. Almost all of them were born with a medicine soul, and were natural cultivators. However, most of them did not have a high cultivation base and were not passionate about cultivation. Therefore, in the central prefecture where flying was forbidden, their lives were not much different from those of mortals. Masons, stonemasons, carpenters, painters. Ning Fan observed for a while, and found out that most of the commoners living in Liuli City were craftsmen. Most of them were working for the temples. There were also some who opened restaurants and inns and sold various kinds of daily necessities. As for the Buddhist cultivators who came to Liuli City for a pilgrimage, they did not charge a single cent for their accommodation. Given the Dali's passion for gold and silver, this kind of convenient behavior was extremely rare. The customs of this place are indeed interesting, Ning Fan said with a smile. Yeah, this place is really interesting. I said I was a Buddhist cultivator and came to Lioli City on a pilgrimage, but those fools didn't even take my money and let me eat and drink whatever I wanted. In the end, I realized that my attire wasn't right. It wasn't the usual monk robe of a Buddhist cultivator, nor was it the usual nomadic clothing of the despicable people. I told them that I was the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain. As a result, those people were even more respectful towards me. Some of the merchants who had some wealth even gave me a lot of gold and silver, asking me to bring them to the holy mountain and add some money to the Medicine Buddha's Taoist hall. Haha, why should I add some oil to the Medicine Buddha's Taoist hall? Just by making a small round, I've swindled at least 2,000 taels of gold. Ha 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 ha. Old Wu was extremely smug. Every time Ning Fan stopped to observe the local customs, he would run to the marketplace and deceive the residents of Lioli City. Does deceiving these people give you a sense of accomplishment? Speaking of which, why are you becoming more and more like Despicable Man? You are so passionate about gold. What's the use of it for us to cultivate the Tao? Ning Fan was speechless. It's useless, but it's fun to trick the idiots here. Interesting, satisfying. Ning Fan was speechless. Duolan was speechless. If Senior and Mr. Wu are interested in the local customs of Lioli City, why don't you take a stroll around the city for a while? Let me arrange a place to stay first. What do you think? Duolan's expression seemed to be troubled by something. All right. You go and arrange a place to stay first. I'm still looking around. Ning Fan knew that Duolan was worried about the words of that red-haired burly man. He also understood that the reason why Duolan did not ask the burly man's request in person was because he was afraid that it would bring him more trouble. After thinking for a while, he could not help but add, "If you have something to do in this city, you don't have to worry about me. Just go ahead and do it." Duolan was stunned. Then he pursed his lips into a smile. "What should I do if I cause trouble for Senior? Then you better try not to cause trouble for me." Ning Fan was speechless. Yes, this junior will certainly not cause any trouble for Senior. Duolan looked at Ning Fan gratefully. Then he found a relay station on the street and directly teleported towards a certain direction in the city. Ning Fan did not ask where Duolan was going to find a place to stay. With his spirit sense, he could easily find Duolan in the city. Of course, Duolan would also take the initiative to contact him. Undeniably, he gradually began to trust Duolan. He was no longer as guarded against him as he was against him in the beginning. Old Wu did not understand the hidden meaning behind Ning Fan and Duolan's conversation. However, he did not care about it either. On the surface, Ning Fan was looking at the surrounding scenery and people. He would even go to the nearby residences to swindle people. However, in reality, he often secretly took out his treasure-seeking tortoise and searched for something in the city. The expression on his face became more and more strange. Strange? How strange? I clearly sense the other piece of the Emperor Jade Fate set in Lioli City. Why can't I sense it any more after entering the city? Could it be that the owner of the Emperor Jade Fate set sensed me because I'm too close to him? Is that why he is hiding? Humph. Then, I will search every house in the city with the evil star. I really want to see where the owner is hiding. I can sense it now. Old Wu's beady eyes flashed. However, he managed to conceal the excitement in his heart very well. Just as he was about to find an excuse to slip away, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He said to Ning Fan, "Oh no. Master, something bad has happened. Little 8 seems to have a stomachache after eating the food from those vendors just now. I need to find a place to clean myself up. I can't accompany Master to stroll around the city anymore. Strange. I, Old Wu, have not had a stomachache for tens of millions of years. Could it be that I've fallen into someone's trap? However, I can use this as an excuse to escape." A stomachache? Are you kidding me? Ning Fan was speechless. Does Old Wu think that I'm a despicable person? Why would I believe such a lie? How could a cultivator with indestructible internal organs have a stomachache? Pucci, as if to prove the truth of his words, Old Wu let out a stinky fart. There seemed to be the sound of his excrement leaking. I really have a stomachache. As an immortal venerated realm cultivator who has abstained from eating for many years, I can't believe that he really has a stomachache. While Ning Fan was at a loss for words, he secretly narrowed his eyes. A green light flashed in an undetectable manner. When he looked around the city, he was instantly shocked. There were quite a number of experts who lived in seclusion in the city. Among them, there was no lack of immortal venerated realm and immortal king realm cultivators. Moreover, each of them had a very profound method of concealing their qi. With Ning Fan's eyesight, he actually could not see through them without using his heavenly vision. There were even a small number of qi which seemed to have entered the realm of immortal emperors. However, they definitely did not belong to the 5 emperors of the Middle Province. Instead, they were experts who lived in seclusion. It was no wonder that old Wu would fall into the trap. Perhaps among some of the fools that he deceived, there were immortal venerated realm, immortal king realm, or even immortal emperor realm cultivators who pretended to be a fool and tricked him. The Buddhist sect did not encourage killing. As for these experts who were willing to live in seclusion in the city, most of them were orthodox Buddhist cultivators with pure Buddhist dharma and almost zero baleful qi. Thus, Ning Fan only gave him a small punishment and made him suffer a stomachache. If you have something to do in this Lioli city, just go ahead. You don't need to find a reason to do so. Of course, be careful when you act. Don't cause me too much trouble. This Lioli city isn't as full of fools as you imagine. Yes. Little 8 will remember this. Little 8 will never cause trouble for Master. Old Wu felt as if he had just been pardoned. He covered his buttocks and ran to a small alley where the rubbish was piled. It seemed like he wanted to settle his problem on the spot instead of looking for a toilet. Some of the residents who passed by began to point at the alley and whisper among themselves. Ning Fan was speechless. He pretended not to know this fellow, and began to stroll around the city alone. It was good that he did not have Duo Lan and Old Wu following him. He could now properly organize the insights he had gained on the 100 Flowers Peak. The ancient devil Tao of destruction. This kind of ancient devil Tao seemed to be incompatible with the Buddhist qi in this place. It was as if they could not coexist. It was as if there was an urge to incite Ning Fan to tear this Lioli city apart and destroy it forcefully, shattering all the majesty of the Buddhist Tao. This was the hatred that the ancient devil had towards the Buddhist Tao. However, it was not the hatred that Ning Fan had for the Buddhist sect. This was the sign that Ning Fan had yet to truly grasp the true essence of the ancient devil. He still could not freely control the will of the ancient devil that wanted to destroy everything. In this place where the bells of the temples could be heard everywhere, it was an opportunity for him to temper his mind. He needed to constantly suppress the restlessness of the bloodline of the ancient devil to destroy the Buddhist sect. On the other hand, he had also obtained a trace of his own understanding of samsara from the 100 Flowers Peak. Samsara was like a stranger. It was not because it was his first time encountering it, but because he had forgotten about it. It was because he could not remember it and the heavens did not allow it. Was there anything strange about being strangers to each other after reincarnation? Was it really not strange for them to be strangers to each other after reincarnation? It was just like why the flowers bloomed, why the rain fell, and why the leaves fell from the trees. All of them were very common things. However, when one pondered about it carefully, all of them contained profound truths. As for the Buddhist Tao, it was precisely the subtleties of many things. When one was accustomed to everything around him, he would no longer find it strange. However, if he lost the heart to explore, many of the Tao insights that he had just gained would really flow away. During the Dharma-ending era, most of the Tao of the ancient devils, ancient demons and ancient gods were lost. Only the ancient Buddhist Tao seemed to have been preserved to this day. Among the 4 heavens, Buddhism flourished in the Western heaven. However, I never had the chance to set foot on it. The prosperity of Buddhism in this place might not be inferior to the Western heaven. What the Buddhists study is the reincarnation of all living things. The ringing of the bell in this city contains the ringing of the bells of thousands of temples. When they are combined together, it actually has a trace of touch to my understanding of samsara. If I try to trace it carefully, I can't find any trace. On one hand, my ancient devil bloodline is rejecting this place. On the other hand, my understanding of samsara is yearning for this place. No matter if it's rejecting or yearning, it's not my intention. This is the proof that I still can't fully control these powers. As for the 8 punishment rings in my body, they also seem to be yearning for this place. It's really strange. After walking for an unknown period of time, there was suddenly a hustle and bustle in front of them. The crowd seemed to be discussing something like innate spiritual medicine, blood martial arena, or soul-nourishing supreme treasure. 3 burly men suddenly squeezed out from the crowd and knocked down everyone who blocked their way in a domineering manner, as if they were in a hurry to continue on their journey. The 3 of them had a powerful cultivation base at the mid-shedding void realm. Even though they were holding back their strength, how could the ordinary residents of Lioli City withstand their attacks? In just a few breaths, they had knocked down 16 to 17 people. Coincidentally, Ning Fan was in the direction where the 3 burly men were heading. The 3 of them did not pay attention to where they were going at all, and directly knocked into Ning Fan. However, the scene where Ning Fan was sent flying did not happen as expected. Instead, one of the burly men who knocked into Ning Fan staggered and fell to the ground from the impact. Damn it! Don't you have eyes when you walk? Just as the burly man was about to scold Ning Fan, he suddenly noticed Ning Fan's attire, and his expression changed. The mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain. His face was filled with rare respect as he said awkwardly, "Please forgive me, my lord. I didn't have eyes when I was walking and bumped into you. Please don't lower yourself to my level." Where was the arrogance that he showed when he bumped into the civilians just now? Ning Fan did not explain his identity. He just gave the 3 burly men a deep look and asked, "What happened here? I seem to have heard someone talking about some innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine." Naturally, he did not forget one of the reasons why he entered the Supreme Pill Sacred Region, to collect innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine for the daughter of Phoenix Emperor Chong Ming. "Huh. Isn't my lord the mausoleum guardian of the Holy Mountain? How could you not know about this? Oh, my lord must be someone who has just come out of seclusion after a long time. No wonder you don't know about the blood martial arena." "What's the blood martial arena?" As the mausoleum guardian of the Holy Mountain, you actually don't know about the blood martial arena? Damn it. I know now. You're not the mausoleum guardian of the Holy Mountain. You're an external cultivator. Pooh. It turns out that I bumped into an external cultivator. That scared the hell out of me. As soon as they realized that Ning Fan was an external cultivator, the 3 burly men no longer showed any respect. They cursed and turned to leave. Ning Fan, on the other hand, flicked his sleeve slightly. A ray of golden light swept across the 3 burly men, and they could no longer move. This was the application of the secret word force. Just like the secret word prestige, it was an inseparable part of the heaven sealing technique. By using the secret word force to neutralize the force of their movement, they were naturally unable to move. One had to admit that Ning Fan's understanding of the force and might of the heaven sealing technique was getting deeper and deeper day by day. Hiss. The 3 of them were shocked. How could they not know that Ning Fan was an external cultivator with unfathomable abilities? Otherwise, how could he use such an unheard of method to immobilize the 3 of them? If the 3 of them were respectful when they mistakenly thought that Ning Fan was the mausoleum guardian of the Holy Mountain, they were shocked now. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Can you tell me more about this blood martial arena? Although Ning Fan was wearing a smile on his face, the 3 burly men felt a chill down their spines. Subconsciously, they became terrified and told Ning Fan everything they knew. Only then did Ning Fan let them go. The blood martial arena was an underground arena in Lioli City. Where there was light, there would be shadows and darkness. If the Lioli City on the surface was as bright as the Holy Realm, then the underground Lioli City would be as bloody as purgatory. The blood martial arena was a place where cultivators could kill each other freely. Those who enter the arena would need to wear a blood martial mask to hide their true identity. That way, they would not have to bear any responsibility and complete the battle. Some people killed for fun. Some people killed for cultivation. There were also some people who watched the strong cultivators kill each other for fun. To enter the Blood Martial Arena to watch the battles, one would need to buy tickets with different prices according to the scale of the battles. Those who participated in the battles would be rewarded if they could survive until the end. Of course, they would need to exchange for the rewards with their lives. Coincidentally, the owner of the Blood Martial Arena had recently obtained an innate spiritual herb from the Fierce Domain continent. Since it was a spiritual herb that could replenish one's soul instead of increasing one's cultivation base, the owner of the Blood Martial Arena did not attach much importance to it. Instead, he took it out as the reward for the Blood Martial Arena's ranking battle. The ranking battle was a grand event that would only be held once every 10 years in the Blood Martial Arena. Even though the owner of the Blood Martial Arena did not attach much importance to this item, it did not mean that the others did not. There were many old monsters in the Great Humble clan who were severely injured, or had their divine souls injured. Therefore, this innate spiritual herb that could replenish one's soul had attracted a large number of people to participate in the ranking battle. Coincidentally, the Night Spirit Ganoderma was a tuft that Ning Fan had never obtained before. It could be used to treat the daughter of the Phoenix Emperor. Therefore, it was quite attractive to him. According to the three burly men, the ranking battle of the Blood Martial Arena would not end with just one battle. Instead, hundreds or thousands of people would fight against each other in pairs. They would continuously advance to the next round and finally, the champion would be decided. There were risks. However, as long as you had sufficient strength, even if you could not win the battle, it was not impossible for you to escape unscathed. It would be fine as long as you were not instantly killed by your opponent. Ning Fan did not dare to say that he would definitely become the champion of the Blood Martial Arena. However, he was confident that even if his opponent was an immortal Emperor realm expert, he would still be able to escape if he was no match for him. In that case, the risk of participating in the Blood Martial Arena was close to zero. There was no harm in trying to obtain the reward of the Night Spirit Ganoderma. The only thing that he was concerned about was the time of the Blood Martial Arena. The ordinary battles of the Blood Martial Arena are held every day. As for the ranking battle, it would only be held once every 10 years. The registration deadline for the ranking battle this time is 3 days later at the Z hour. The starting time is 1:15 noon on the 4th day. The time of the ranking battle is not fixed. It is decided by the owner of the Blood Martial Arena alone. However, I don't know why the ranking battle would start when the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing battle is approaching. There are still 7 days before the second round of the Middle State begins. The Blood Martial ranking battle will start 3 days before the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing battle. If the participants of the Blood Martial Arena are coincidentally participants of the second round, whether they are injured or dead, it would affect their performance in the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing competition. Or perhaps, the Blood Martial Arena's time is so close to the second round, because it originally had the intention to attract the participants of the second round. These thoughts flashed through Ning Fan's mind, but it did not affect his decision. He arrived at a relay station on the street. After paying a small amount of gold and silver, he used the teleportation formation in the relay station and directly teleported to the underground world of Luli City. Blood Martial Arena. This place was like an underground city built on a pile of rocks. There were tens of thousands of stone houses. At the center of the city, there were hundreds of circular arenas of different sizes. It was dark and damp. The smell of blood assaulted his nostrils. Inside the arenas, the unbridled roars of men could be heard continuously. On the roadside, there were men and women who did not mind the pedestrians and directly carried out the most primitive exercise in the alleys along the streets. Ning Fan walked out of one of the underground teleportation formations and scanned the place with his spirit sense. He could not help but frown. He did not like the chaos of this place. The ground under his feet was thick and solid, giving him a cold and hard feeling. He remembered that the underground of the Middle State was made of hard rocks. It was built to be impregnable. Even the extremely strong stone dragon that was 100 li could not escape through the earth. However, there was someone who could open up such an underground city in the hard rocks of the Middle State. It was not bad at all. As soon as Ning Fan walked out of the teleportation formation, a seductive lady who was wearing extremely revealing clothes walked towards him and giggled. Sir, are you here to watch the battle? Today, there will be a late thought fragmentation realm expert fighting against an adult day true dragon. It will be the most anticipated battle today. The entrance ticket costs 500 stone coins. Sir, do you want one? If you buy 10 tickets at once, I will have special services. Stone coins were a kind of currency that was only circulated in Luli City and a few other regions. They were made of medicine soul stones, and were roughly equivalent to Dao crystals. The seductive lady gave Ning Fan a coquettish look. However, Ning Fan gave her a disdainful look and said indifferently, I don't want to watch the battle. I am here to register for the blood martial ranking battle. May I know where the registration place is? Registering for the ranking battle? TSK. I am so handsome. Why would I go to the ranking battle to die? Could it be that I have no money to spend and want to fight for my life? With my looks, if you are really short of money, I might have some connections. Tonight, come to me. I will teach you the way to make money. How about it? The seductive lady's eyes were filled with lust. However, Ning Fan's reply was still as cold as ice. Where is the registration place? You really don't know how to flirt. The lady did not feel offended. After giggling, she showed Ning Fan the way and invited him to have a good time. Ning Fan was too lazy to care about it. He went straight to the registration place for the ranking battle. It was one of the hundreds of arenas for this technique. There was no audience in the arena. There were more than 100 people in the arena who were undergoing the test. There were many people who wanted to participate in the ranking battle. However, not everyone was qualified to do so. They had to go through a series of tests in order to be qualified to participate. There were not many items in the test. There was only one item, which was to receive a single attack from the examinee. The examinee was an old man with a scar on his face. He seemed to be a body cultivator with a peak-shedding void realm cultivation base. Among the hundreds of people here, only 7 or 8 people had successfully passed the test. However, they also suffered some minor injuries during the test. They were currently recuperating on the spot. The remaining people were either those who had not taken the test yet, or those who could not receive a single attack from the muscular old man. However, they did not give up and wanted to continue trying. Are you also here to register for the blood martial ranking battle? The old man with a scar on his face glanced at Ning Fan, who had just entered the arena, and shook his head. He was so thin and weak that he did not look like a body cultivator. Those who were not body cultivators would not be able to receive his attack easily. They would also be at a disadvantage in the blood martial arena. Yes. Ning Fan answered indifferently. Then go to the back and queue up. Ning Fan nodded his head and walked to the back of the queue. His eyes scanned through each of the examinees. The weakest of these examinees were only at the void refinement realm and void fragmentation realm. The stronger ones were mostly at the life immortal realm. There were only a few true immortal realm cultivators. The ones with the highest cultivation base among the examinees were actually 3 people who looked extremely familiar to him. They were the 3 burly men who had bumped into him just now. You're indeed worthy of being called the 3 prodigies of the Sea Shaman realm. You really live up to your reputation. All of you actually managed to receive the 10th punch from old ancestor Kwang. You should know that only late-shedding void realm experts could make old ancestor Kwang use his 10th punch. I'm afraid the 3 of you have already taken a half step into the late-shedding void realm. Am I right? How enviable. Ha ha ha. If you guys continue cultivating for tens of thousands of years, you might even have a tiny bit of our strength. You don't have to be too envious. With the strength of the 3 of you, I'm afraid there's a high chance that you can get into the top 100 in the ranking battle. Ha ha ha. That's for sure. The 3 of us are the elites of the Sea Shaman realm. It's a piece of cake for us to get into the top 100. Unfortunately, we're not fighting in a team. Otherwise, if the 3 of us join forces, we can even escape unscathed from an early thought fragmentation realm expert. If we're at the thought fragmentation realm, we'll be able to sweep through all of them. Hiss. The 3 of you actually managed to escape unscathed from an early thought fragmentation realm expert with your combined strength. How impressive. Ha ha ha. Who asked us to be so powerful? The three burly men were proudly accepting the praises of the crowd. All of a sudden, they heard a burst of laughter coming from behind them. Damn it! Who's laughing? The three of them turned around angrily. What they saw was Ning Fan's faint smile. What a coincidence. Are you also here for the life-saving ranking battle? His tone was actually very polite. However, there was also a deep fear in his tone. Ning Fan answered indifferently, and no longer cared about the three prodigies of the sea. People with such cultivation bases were not worthy of his attention at all. As for those who were staring at him because of his outer cultivator attire, he ignored all of them, and did not give them any explanation. The three prodigies of the sea were not the only ones who looked familiar to Ning Fan. There was another person who gave Ning Fan a sense of familiarity. It was a young man wearing a cow-horned mask. Ning Fan could not see his face. Looking at his back, he looked very familiar. However, his chi was completely concealed by the cow-horn mask. Only the two eyes under the cow-horn mask were somewhat familiar. However, they gave people a dull and empty feeling. This gaze, it was actually Xianyu-chun. Why are you here? Ning Fan walked towards the man with the cow-horn mask and asked with a frown. You. Who are you? You look a little familiar. The young man with the cow-horned mask spoke in a tone that Ning Fan was extremely familiar with. His tone lacked the usual foolishness of Xianyu-chun. Instead, it had a sharp and threatening feeling. You don't recognize me, huh? Interesting. Is this mask affecting you? Ning Fan did not waste any time talking to the man with the cow-horn mask. His hand moved like lightning. Before the masked man could see clearly, Ning Fan's palm had already pressed on his mask. At first, he wanted to take off the mask. However, the moment his hand touched the mask, it was repelled by an indescribably strong force. Fortunately, his protective golden light appeared at the same time, and dissolved the terrifying force that was heading towards Ning Fan. His face, however, turned solemn. The tremendous force that was attached to the mask was comparable to a strike from an immortal venerate. Yes, there is an immortal venerate expert here. However, is Xianyu-chun wearing this mask? Moreover, during that brief moment of contact, he seemed to have felt a trace of samsara chi from the mask. Samsara is like a stranger. Is it the power of samsara that makes Xianyu-chun who is wearing the mask feel unfamiliar to me? What is the origin of this mask? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.